Okay, we're going to call to order the Select Board meeting of March 7th, 2022. We'll start with the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the town accountant warrants of January 27th, February 3rd, February 15th, February 17th, February 24th, and March 3rd, as well as two on-site liquor license applications, one-day license applications for Umbrella Arts Center on March 22nd and April 2nd. And then gift acceptances, $1,000 to the fire department from Avidia Bank, $1,500 to the fire department from Middlesex Bank, and giftings from the Friends of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery that were, I think, described in our packet.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you to Avidia Bank, Middlesex Bank, and beautiful, nice work at Sleepy Hollow. Very nice job there. And the town manager's report.
Good evening. We actually have a member from the Friends of Sleepy Hollow who is joining us, and I wonder if Mr. Plodzik would like to say a few words about the gift.
Sure. Is he joining us on Zoom?
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Well, thank you. Yes, the Friends of Sleepy Hollow are now in our third month of our 20th year anniversary celebration. And in doing so, our distinguished board has opted to make a donation to the town at the cemetery of two permanent giftings. One is to replace the what we're calling temporary bollards in front of Morning Victory. They were put up by the town cemetery people, et cetera, and in time for the dedication a year or so ago. And we are looking to replace them with much more stable and more beautiful, I should use the phrase, bollards. The second is a bit of a historical one. Many of us recall the original Pritchard Gate at the cemetery from Bedford Street, and it had beautiful lettering on top labeling Sleepy Hollow. And those are no longer there. The nomenclature is no longer there. So we thought that if we could get a replica of the lettering and have it put on the two permanent portions of the Knoll Gate, two things would be accomplished. One is the knoll would be better recognized as a part of Sleepy Hollow. And probably more importantly and significantly is that the historical connection between the original cemetery and the Pritchard Gate be now connected to the newer portion of the knoll. And we have worked collaboratively with the cemetery committee. And at their last meeting, they unanimously approved both projects. So we are extremely pleased at that. If you're looking for a financial figure, we have appropriated no more than $12,000 for the bollards and no more than $15,000 for the lettering. And we think that can be accomplished within those figures. So I thank you for your consideration and now your acceptance of these two giftings.
Thank you for the gifts. They're wonderful.
They're beautiful. Thank you so much.
So I have the privilege of being the Select Board Liaison to the Cemetery Committee and have sat through the presentations on this. And so much work has gone into this and very thoughtfully. And we can't thank you enough for this gift. Thank you.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Okay, and now we will go to the town manager's report.
Sure, thank you again. And I just note for the record that we have 19 participants logging into our Zoom meeting. I know you can't see that here, so there are 19 individuals joining us. I wanted to make mention just of a couple of items. First, that the town manager's office and the town clerk's office are working on a new database for board and committee volunteers. You're welcome. Jason Bulger, our IT director, is here this evening. He'll be on your agenda a little bit later, and I think he'd like to take a few minutes just to talk to you about that project and give you an update on where we are.
Wonderful.
The current database is almost impossible to use.
It is. It's definitely reached the end of its life, and I know we had staff looking at a couple of different programs and have come up with one that they think meets the needs of multiple departments. So we're looking forward to that. Just a couple other items of note. The police department took delivery of the Tesla Model Y. This is the first fully electric car in our fleet that came in last week. Very exciting for the department and the town. And this was made possible by a very generous gift of Jim and Judy Terry several months ago. So we appreciate that gift. We look forward to adding additional electric vehicles to the police fleet. The police department and fire department are working closely with the celebrations committee on the Patriots Day parade. They've had a number of meetings, and that is coming along quite well. The Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission will have an assessor on site at the police station on March 10 and 11 to work through our accreditation. There's an announcement here that there have been 29 streets selected totaling approximately 10 miles that will be the recipients of crack seal treatment for the 2022 crack seal contract. We have bid openings the bid opening on March 10th. A note that our invoices have gone out for our spring curbside invoicing, and the invoices are due March 31st. We have an opportunity for another grant for the Assabet River Bluff Preservation Project. So this is pretty exciting. We do have a grant application that is already in for a $500,000 grant through the Land and Water Conservation Fund program, but we have a second opportunity through the MVP program. That is also a $500,000 grant, but we will only be eligible for one of those grants. But we will be putting in the second application, and hopefully we'll get one of the two grants. The West Concord Junction Cultural District has announced that its next mural will be unveiled on September 24th, and that's the same day as Porch Fest, which is coming back. So that's very exciting. There are 12 artists that will be participating in the mural, and that the mural was designed by Ed Feather, and it will be located at 30 Beharrell Street. I know we're running a little bit behind, so I think I'll probably forego some of the other announcements. There are a lot of announcements in the report about different activities and programs taking place across departments. And I will close by saying that I will be on vacation next week, the 13th through the 18th. And Deputy Town Manager Kate Hodges will be serving as acting town manager, but I will be remoting into the focus session on the 14th on transportation and the Finance Committee's public hearing on the 17th as well. So
Sorry to ruin your vacation.
yeah. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, I had a comment and a question. I'm the liaison for the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee, and it's full of creativity and energy and enthusiasm. And the mural looks really fascinating, and they're developing programs to go along with it, like a walking tour and something with the Consortium of Music and the Concord Players as well. My question was, I don't know if this was widespread through the town, but last week, one night, there were 5 catalytic converters stolen from Priuses at Concord Green. And I didn't know if there was, if that was more townwide, or if you knew anything, if you had heard anything about that, about other parts of town.
Yes, that is a problem. It has been a problem here. It's been a problem all
Everywhere,
over the place.
everywhere.
I've heard that pop up many different places. I thought we had sent out maybe a news and notices on that.
Yes.
Notice on that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that definitely something to be on the alert. And there are certain vehicles that are more apt to be targeted by this type of activity.
Are we safe parked out here right now?
I think probably out in front of the townhouse, you are safe.
We were told that in the garages, in the carports, they unscrew the light bulbs so people can't see them. So to park in the 24-hour lighting. And incidentally, a few days ago, my son had his stolen in Connecticut.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
Wow.
a thing.
Yeah,
Wow.
not good.
Other questions for the town manager? I had one quick question about what I read was a, quote, "no parking minimum" in Hudson, and I was wondering what that means.
So that is, MAPC had a program that some of our planning staff attended, and there was a presentation on the Hudson downtown area, the revitalization of that area, talking about steps that they took to be more friendly to business development, and one of them was a no parking minimum. So that means there is no requirement to provide on-site or parking as a part of a redevelopment. And I did speak with Marcia Rasmussen about this, and she mentioned that in Concord Center, the planning board often provides a waiver to parking. So we do have parking requirements, but because we have off-site parking available, that often waivers are granted. And in this case, in Hudson, there's just no requirement for parking versus having to go through a waiver process. I hope I didn't butcher that too bad.
No, well, I mean, there are, and the kinds of conditions are, for example, if you have employees, that you need to find some way to provide employee parking because employees need to park all day long.
Mhm.
So there were a variety of conditions, and it's certainly not a given, but certainly the planning policy evolution is towards reducing the parking requirements with the eye towards encouraging more foot traffic and saying, well, there aren't enough parking spots, then people will take other kinds of transit, is the theory. Now, that's assuming you have a certain amount of density to be able to make that happen and local housing available that's walkable. But it is something that the planning board has been considering changing the parking requirements for some time. And even in some cases, there are parking maximums as opposed to parking minimums that are being proposed in some communities.
Surface.
Sorry?
That's impervious surface.
Well, to reduce that, yes,
Parking you need to pave, and then,
that's right.
Okay,
but I
well,
took note of this because it struck me that this was almost exactly the opposite of what we're proposing for the thorough business district. That is,
Henry, can you speak right into that microphone?
yeah.
There you
I
go.
was
Thank
saying
you.
that the what had been successful in Hudson is quite the opposite of what's being proposed for the thorough business district. And the waiver of parking requirements, which is almost universal in Concord Center because almost nobody has parking, just represents one more hurdle to people establishing businesses.
Right, okay. I just meant to ask a quick question, but yeah,
It's not a
okay.
topic on our
Right,
agenda,
right,
so.
right. Okay, any other questions? All right, some brief chair's remarks. Thank you to Robin. We are all very happy to get the packet on Thursday. And we hope that can happen every week if possible. Some dates, the select board will be meeting live from now on in this room in the townhouse on the second floor with Zoom capability, a hybrid type meeting, unless we have another big surge or something. indefinitely. We'll be meeting live. There are 3 more public hearings coming up for the town meeting, March 8th, 10th, and 17th. On April 3rd, the League of Women Voters is having a candidates forum. On April 12th, we have the town election. And on May 1st is the annual town meeting. And on March 20th, everybody should try to come to the Honored Citizen of the Year ceremony and refreshments, and it's a great occasion on March 20th. I think that's also in the townhouse this year. And the chair's breakfast will be on March 16th this month. That's it for my announcements, and we will go on to the Hutchins Farm land transfer.
On the honored citizen, I'm quite sure it's going to be Harvey Wheeler.
Oh, they moved it?
Well, I talked to them about bringing it back to this room where it always had been.
Yeah.
And they said that because of the number of people and organizations that they wanted to have attend, and because the room has been made smaller, that there was not really enough room to hold. They put it in terms of the legal capacity of the room was not sufficient to hold the people. that would be- And so Harvey Wheeler is.
Back at Harvey Wheeler. I remember they had it there 2 or 3 years
Yes,
ago. All right.
I wanted to get it back here, but they
Okay.
fought me to a standstill.
Anyway, it's a wonderful occasion. Really fun event. Okay, Hutchins Farm land transfer. Carrie, who do we have here for that?
Sure. So we have Delia Kay, Conservation Administrator.
Hey, Delia.
Good evening, Select Board. Thank you. Delia K, Natural Resources Director, and thank you, Robin. Robin is sharing an aerial showing the transfer of some land within Hutchins agricultural preservation restriction. And we have Dennis Crimmins here, who is the attorney for Hutchins Farm, who can really speak a little bit more clearly about what this transfer is. I can say that the Natural Resources Commission, the Planning Board, and the Board of Assessors have voted to authorize this transfer, which is basically to allow a swap of land from parcel AA, which is within the existing APR. There's a shed that doesn't belong in the APR, and the APR will this action will take this land out of the existing APR and transfer parcel BB into the agricultural preservation restriction, so that there's no net loss of land within the APR. In fact, there's a slight increase. And so that's one action that is being requested of the Select Board. The second action is to not have the Select Board exercise its right of first refusal, because this is in Chapter 61. That's an action that the Select Board needs to consider and vote on. Dennis, I know you're here to speak on this, and if you can elaborate and clarify those comments. Thank you.
Surely, I think the most succinct and probably one of the best summaries is Delia's write-up that where she sent to the planning board, to the select board, the action taken by the Division of the Natural Resources Commission, I should say. This is essentially a one-for-one swap. Unfortunately, it is the good news is this property is subject to an agricultural preservation restriction. It's also subject to General Laws Chapter 61A, and as a result of that, any transfer of the property potentially triggers a right of first refusal. So that's one of the reasons why we're in front of the board tonight, and I think this has previously been acted on or reviewed by the Planning Board, Natural Resources Commission, and the assessors, all of whom have approved this. And what is the other complicating factor that we have here is that when these agricultural preservation restrictions were put in place that run to the benefit of the state, the Commonwealth, basically, the town was also given a right of first refusal. So technically, we're asking for a waiver of that right of first refusal as well as the one that exists under Chapter 61A. So I've probably gone on too long and confused people, but I'm happy to answer any questions there are.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? Henry?
I don't have a question. I have no problem with the transaction as a concept. And I would be happy to waive our right of first refusal if they've complied with the requirements for that waiver. But what I see here is a lot of documentation. The waiver document asks for things in addition to a mere waiver. They ask us to make a representation about actions that may or may not be taken by the Natural Resources Commission. And then there is an amended agricultural, restriction, I think is what it is. But a document, a substantial document that deals with changes to the agricultural restriction. And I would be very disinclined to sign documentation of this kind, which is technical, legal documentation, unless it had been reviewed by town council. And I think that would be appropriate. And I don't believe that's been done.
Carrie, can you answer that?
So I can answer that, Terry. It has been reviewed by town council, and this is a confirmatory agricultural preservation restriction that the Natural Resources Commission is required to vote on to accept, to make sure that it is within the terms of the existing APR. And this vote by the select board is to consider whether that the NRC's decision was appropriate. It has been reviewed by town council, and the exercise of the right of first refusal is simply because the land is within Chapter 61. The planning board, the Board of Assessors, and the NRC need to make a determination as to whether or not it is within the town's interest to purchase parcel BB, as shown on this graphic, because it is within the existing landscape of the Hutchins farm landscape, and it really corrects an erroneous property boundary. The three boards voted to recommend the select board that it was not appropriate or not within the town's interest to purchase this parcel A coming out of the APR.
That really doesn't address the question. I understand what the concept is and what they want to do, and I think we all do. The question is whether or not the documentation, which is technical documentation, has been reviewed. And if it has, then I think it would be appropriate to make it a part of the process that we get a brief memo from town council stating that they have reviewed and approved this documentation. It doesn't have to go into any great detail, but I think that's a necessary part of asking this board to sign off on something that is technical. And I have been warned by Ruth Lauer in her manual about serving on the select board that members of the board who are attorneys should try to refrain from practicing law in their activities on the board.
Okay. Well, that's a good point. And I had asked Carrie And I understand it has been reviewed by town council, but we don't have a memo in our packet, but
Yeah, sure. If I could just respond, Henry, I think that that is a great point. This was a new request to me. I understand that you probably have seen it before, and it's been going through the process for a long time. But I did follow up with Attorney Jennifer Platt at Anderson and Krieger. She is the attorney that did review this documentation, did confirm that she did review. But I would agree in the future, I think it would be helpful to have a memo, an overview. I think it would be helpful for a lot of the agenda items that you have, and we're, turning a new leaf. And but I do understand that concern, and it would be helpful for the public to have that information as well. So that is something that we will work to improve on.
And I assume that there probably is some brief memo in their file at the law firm that, that already has been written, that has, so it'd be very little extra work to just reproduce that.
okay, good point. Other questions?
Yeah, I had questions about whether the parcel AA, if there's development anticipated either on that parcel or on the housing parcel next to it. And I also see that parcel BB is covered in trees right now. And is it intended to be cleared for agricultural use, or is there any other anticipated change in the uses or condition of these parcels after the transfer takes place?
If I might, this is Dennis Crimmins. I'd speak to the first question with respect to parcel AA and its incorporation into, I think it's 820 Monument Street in Gordon. Who's on the call could confirm that if I'm not correct. I don't believe there is any contemplated development activity on that parcel. That's currently owned by a separate entity, of which Gordon's sister is the primary party. Having worked with her for several years, my understanding is that she's trying to preserve that property in its current state, and so I can't be absolutely definitive, but I'm not aware of any current plans to develop that. Gordon could probably speak further to that, and also on the question of parcel BB and the fact that it's now wooded and how that would be incorporated into farm operations.
I can speak to that. Gordon Bemis. I'm the manager of Hutchins Land Company and Hutchins Farm. Parcel AA is going to be incorporated or will be with 806 Monument, the yellow house. And there is certainly no intention to develop it. In fact, if you look at the side yard setbacks and so forth, it's pretty worthless. Parcel BB is actually quite valuable to the farm because we actually have a farm road that passes over it at the present time. So that will put the farm road onto farm property and not on somebody else's property. So it's actually more valuable to us than parcel AA for agricultural uses. In fact, the bottom corner of it actually is if you look at the map, is actually in the orchard, which we're part of an orchard there. So we're actually gaining agricultural land. Parcel AA is also on a hill, so it's completely useless for farm activity up at the edge of the property. I think that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. Other questions from the board? All right, seeing none, I think we are ready for a motion.
So move to not exercise the town's right of first refusal in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 61A, for the parcel of land as shown in parcel AA on a, quote, plan of land in Concord, Mass, owned by the Hutchins Realty Trust, the Oak Tree Homestead LLC, 820 Monument Street Nominee Trust, and Hutchins Land Company LLC, dated January 14th, 2019 by Pearly Engineering LLC, recorded as plan number 444 of 2019 in the Middlesex South District Registry of Deeds, which parcel AA contains, according to such plan, 3,534 square feet approximately, and moved, and so do we want to vote on that before?
Yeah,
we-
let's vote on that.
Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Move to accept the confirmatory agricultural preservation restriction as shown in Area 6, shown as Area 6 on a plan of land in Concord, Mass. Owned by Hutchins Realty Trust, dated November 25th, 1988, by David W. Purley Civil Engineers, recorded as Plan Number 1404 of 1989 in the Middlesex South Registry of Deeds in Plan Record Book 20,287, page 63, excluding parcel AA on a, quote, plan of land in Concord, Mass. Owned by the Hutchins Realty Trust, the Oak Tree Homestead LLC, 820 Monument Street Nominee Trust, and Hutchins Land Company LLC, end quote, dated January 14th, 2019 by Purley Engineering LLC, recorded as Plan Number 444 of 2019 in the Middlesex South Registry of Deeds, and including parcel BB on said Plan Number 444 of 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for reading all of that. Okay. Great. We will move on now to the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. We have Keith Bergman with us, if you want to come up to the table. Keith?
Can I invite my?
Oh, yes.
The only member who's in the room who's not already sitting at the table. Gary is really trust. Yeah, this is Rich Feely.
Rich, welcome. Okay. So I understand you have been working hard on the proposed guidelines, and that's what we're going to go over tonight.
Sure. Thanks very much, Keith Bergman, 56 White Avenue, Chair of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. When our board last met virtually with you on January 3rd, we said we'd be back in a month or so with a proposed set of policy guidelines for the trust. And we're back. In fact, all five of us are here because we've already heard from Mike Lawson at the beginning of the meeting. So we are not posted. This is, we are at your posted meeting. We have posted a meeting for ourselves on Thursday afternoon to follow up with any discussion that happens tonight. So thanks for having us back. In your packets, you have the proposed trust document itself. It is 5 pages, 3 pages of text, followed by a 2-page table that goes into details on what constitutes low and moderate income. And I wanted to provide some background, just an overview of background, what's in there, and then be happy to have a conversation.
Yes, I think you need to speak right up to that microphone because of
Okay.
even closer than that.
Even closer.
Yeah, like this. Yeah,
Sort of like karaoke.
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Without
All right.
the music.
Well, I have my tape deck over here, so in case we need to. So the first part of our guidelines is a background, and we felt it important to provide some context for where they come from. And importantly, we're calling these an interim policy guidelines for use of funds, with the operative word being interim, because we anticipate that once a couple of things happen to shift us more into a long-term mode, it will be important to revisit these guidelines. And in particular, we're looking at the long-term, consisting of the point in time when the dedicated funding sources for the trust, which were approved or petitioned by the 2019 annual town meeting for home rule petitions for real estate transfer fee and for a building permit surcharge, which would collectively contribute $2.6 million a year to be deposited in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That was the plan that was brought to the voters in 2019 at the time that there was that the statute to create an affordable housing trust was adopted. It actually took until the 2020 town meeting to approve a bylaw establishing the trust, and then it took about another year for the trust to get up and operating. So we've been in existence since September of 2021. But what we've seen in engaging our housing stakeholders, the Rich's group, the Concord Housing Foundation, which he also serves as president, the Concord Housing Development Corporation, the Concord Housing Authority. We've reached out to each of those groups, met jointly to develop proposed goals, and we asked them a couple of things. First, well, let me focus on this language in the bylaw. It says that Section 6, Item 18 of the trust bylaw directs the trustees to develop policy goals and statements consistent with the town's adopted housing goals and subject to approval of the select board to serve as guidelines for the trust. So ultimately, that's why we're here, is to get select board approval of a set of policy statement which would serve as guidelines. But on our way here, we engaged our fellow housing stakeholders to talk about what the town's adopted housing goals are, and we could identify 3 places to look for: the 2018 Envision Concord housing component, the 2015 Housing Production Plan, which is being updated in 2022, a process that starts this Wednesday is the kickoff for the Housing Production Plan update. And the third item is the Community Preservation Committee's guidelines, which they review and update annually, for the criteria that they use for community housing projects. So those 3 sets of documents, and I apologize if we didn't circulate it in what you all got, but some of you have it because I got a question about it before the meeting. But we circulated a list that had prepared for us by Liz Russ of the Regional Housing Services Office, identifying specifically what the adopted housing goals are as a jumping off point. There were 8 such goals in the Envision Concord. There are 9 in the community preservation. I'm sorry, there are 8 goals in the Housing Production Plan, 6 in Envision Concord, and 9 in the CPC. So in meeting with our stakeholders, we try to identify which of those goals are ones that the Affordable Housing Trust should prioritize. Some of those goals are not about us, they're about regulatory things that should be done by planning board or whatever, or financial mechanisms. But what are the ones that we were uniquely qualified to do? And those consist of such things as, say, from Envision Concord, developing achievable targets for preserving or creating housing types, developing self-sustaining financial mechanisms for achieving housing targets, bringing private and public groups representing open space, land conservation, and housing together to identify solutions in meeting goals. And in fact, if some of those things just jumped out at us when we were looking at the one application we received this year for funding is ASAP at River Bluff, which we've recommended, we've approved $650,000 towards their total project cost of $1 million to acquire the 1 acre for 5 affordable units. But we were mindful in the absence of having written guidelines, we were looking closely at what were the goals that had been adopted. Some of the housing production plan goals also apply, increasing variety of housing options, especially near village centers. It's located near, Assabet is located near West Concord Village, creating affordable rental or ownership for households with low and moderate incomes. Assabet is funded in part by CPA funding, which means that it's community housing, which means it will not be more than 100% of area-wide median income. But importantly, in order to be able to count all 5 units as affordable on the subsidized housing inventory, that if they're ownership units, and that's for the CHDC to determine ultimately if the project goes forward, that if they're ownership units, they would all be up to 80% of AMI, because that's what you can count under the subsidized housing inventory. If it's rental with 5 units, 25% of them, or 2 out of 5, at least would need to be 80%. The other 3 could be 80%. The other 3 could be 100% in order for all 5 to be counted on the SHI. And we were looking at, one of the things that we're concerned about is that with the limited funds in the short term, in the interim, if you will, of $500,000 a year, the money has to count. How we spend the money needs to count, and where we would most like it to have it count is in the subsidized housing inventory. We'd like to focus on creating units. Not to dive too deep down the well here, but just in general terms, we were satisfied by way of example with the way that the Assabet project gives us 5 affordable units for the total project cost of $1 million. That's just the math says that's $200,000 per affordable unit. We like that a lot better than the initial proposal that we were shown, which was a cost of $2 million for the housing component for 1.75 acres, where there would be a higher number of total number of housing units, but a lower number of affordable units. Out of 8 units, only 2 maybe were going to be affordable. We didn't much like that. We actually took the lead from Rich's Housing Foundation, which says that they'd support the project, but you have to have at least 5 that were affordable. And so we took that as an important thing to come out of how we view the application of these goals. Not to I can dive deeper if you like, but I just want to make some other high-level points. The legislation, reaching the long term, we actually think we might reach the long term eventually. There's a lot of dynamics going on, including the city of Boston filing their legislation, the governor saying he doesn't like it, all within the same news cycle. There are 8 communities that we're a part of, that have, in the boat with, that have filed home rule legislation for real estate transfer fees for affordable housing. So we have some company there. There's a statewide bill that has not yet been reported out favorably. They have a few more months to do that. So we think that we're not talking about silence, or we don't know, or we haven't heard back. We've got legislative committees that have reported out favorably on both of Concord's home rule petitions for the real estate transfer fee and the building permit surcharge.
And all the other local home rule petitions have been reported out favorably. I don't know about Boston because it's so new, but all the others, Nantucket, Chatham, Somerville, Cambridge, have all been reported out. Doesn't mean they're going to pass, but they're out of committee.
And Rich has been on
experienced that.
is it LOHA?
Yes,
Coalition. of-
local option for housing affordability. They now have somebody who's trying to make us easier to access.
So they've been reported favorably out of the House and out of the Senate?
Out of the committee?
Out of the
The
housing
joint
committee.
committee.
A joint committee?
Joint
Ah,
committee.
The
got
joint
it.
housing committee,
Okay.
yep.
And so now they're winding their ways, and
Yeah,
actually,
right.
because so many bills were all reported out at the same by a deadline just a few weeks ago, many of them have not yet found a place. All right, what's the next step? Is it Senate
Yeah.
Ways and Means? Is it
Yeah, okay.
House? Is it who? What's the next step? But hope has been kept alive with these. So that's more than we've had before.
And I just, Keith, if I could just, and you've probably seen Mass General Brigham, for a variety of reasons, has supported this quite strongly. And I expect the other big healthcare systems are going to come out in favor of it.
So in that context, it makes us feel better about asking for money in the interim. I'll tell you that, because it's like, well, it's not going to go on forever. We hope, but certainly when we're making requests, as we've done with this board, and we appreciate your support and your consideration, that we'd love to have another, $500,000 for the coming year, and if there can be a funding source for that. But what we felt strongly about is that the guidelines we want to write up are frankly the guidelines for how to spend the $2.6 million a year. And try as we might, and just discussing it, we couldn't. The immediacy of just having the current funding level was what our focus was. All right, well, what do we think we can do right now? We definitely need to have a better, bigger, more thoughtful set of guidelines developed jointly with other town entities, the town input, housing stakeholders. It's my hope, and I think our committees as well, that this housing production plan update that's just launching is a unique opportunity for everyone who will have a role to play, to be working together and figuring out what can each group do best. Figure out what your overall goals are based on updated census data. It hasn't, goes back now to the plan was approved housing production plan was approved in 2015. And so we're hoping that the next iteration of these guidelines will be much more robust and based on how to live up to the challenge of having a big, the large amount of funding that was envisioned when we started. In the short term, though, and especially, frankly, to have something on the books now where we've got money in the pot that you transferred the balance of funds to us, and so we wanted to have some guidelines to go by. I should say, though, that because that didn't stop us from approving $650,000 for Assabet River Bluff, and the reason it didn't is two things. Number one, we briefed you about it before we did it, but more importantly, there was another entity in town applying its rules, which had come up, that had said yes, 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 and that is the Community Preservation Committee. So it was very helpful for us to see the application that went to them, how it was rated, and signed off on, many of the goals that we were concerning ourselves with as well. So what we did, just the format that we focus on here in the guidelines, while we mentioned that there are specific policy goals, the three that I talked about, they're not appended to here. Happy to do that if it clarifies. And also happy to, we do say 2015 Concord Housing Production Plan. We would anticipate that it's getting updated in 2022, and be glad to, to highlight that as well. Well, so what we focused on was qualifying projects and selection criteria and what the definitions of low and moderate income are. Ours was more of a practical approach. If globally the projects that come to us should meet the policy goals, then we're jumping ahead to specifically, given our limited funds, what do we want to prioritize? And it really has to do with things that add, whether it's purchasing land or acquiring existing homes or that things that would allow us to add inventory to units to subsidized housing inventory. And I want to make you aware of this spreadsheet that's attached there.
Very
because
helpful.
there wasn't one. I asked the Mass Housing Partnership for one. They didn't have one, so I gave them one. This one of the statute doesn't define the housing trust statute does not define low and moderate income. Rather, it directs you to what the funding source is, and that's critical. For example, if you were to give us ARPA funds, ARPA has a definition of what housing is. So if you were to approve it traditionally as ARPA housing projects, it would be 60 or 80% of the AMI. If you were to give it to us as what's the word, general revenues, under the catch-all category, because you're under $10 million, we could arguably go up to 80 or 100% of AMI with what we spend. And we wanted to at least flag that in here so that someone takes what a program with low and moderate income means. We need to go back to where it is. If it's CPA, it's only up to 100%. If it's some of the home rule petitions that have been filed, had to look it up. They have different definitions, and the home rule petition for the building permit surcharge references Section 1 of Chapter 60 of the general laws. Had to look it up. That's 120% of AMI. The statewide bill, which has not been reported out in its current form, it's up to 175%. With a big asterisk after it, it says that it might be lower. So I think it represents that that's a collaborative bill that's meant to do for a lot of towns. And that the zoning, the planned residential development has definitions of starter price housing, which would be a moderate income category, up to 110%, moderate price housing up to 150%. So, and nothing in the category of low income. So we wanted to make sure that there was a reference so that if someone's applying for funds and they want to do it for low and moderate income, you really have to look it up and see what that means. And then we've got to account for separately, we meaning Carrie, have to account for how the funds are spent by funding source. So, and prove back to the funding agency. I've talked a lot, and
Well, thank you for putting all of this
yeah.
together. There's a lot of work here, and
Rich was the principal drafter of this document.
Well, thank you.
The text.
It's really excellent, and especially that two-page chart with all the different definitions of AMIs.
That's
Very-
Keith.
Very well done. Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have some questions? Board members?
Well, I had asked some of the questions offline before the meeting, but, and thank you, Keith, for some of your responses there on the policy goals. I mean, with 24 different goals among those three documents, it is potentially a little ambiguous. And I think the follow-up that you provided, the highlighted chart, if I'm reading it right, it came up with about 8 goals. And it still seems to me that it would be worth enumerating those, but rather than just referencing the 3 other documents and having others figure it out.
Yeah.
So but I don't want to hold the process up. I mean, I understand it's an interim document, and that the housing production plan is quite likely to supersede any set of goals that we come up with now. 2015, the last time they did one was a while back. And while it's the same town, things evolve. But the other couple of questions I had, one was just a comment on page 3, which is 53 in our packet. There was bullet 6 on the list. Under your guidelines, you had said for planned residential developments and other multi-unit projects effectively integrates, as a criterion that it integrates affordable units in the design without differentiation of such units. But I just wanted to mention that our zoning bylaw already states that as a requirement. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that it's needed in this document. And in fact, I think duplicating it would, we usually try to avoid duplicating across documents.
That was done in response to comments, I think, from the Housing Authority, particularly, but housing advocates, that, the units, the subsidized units should be similar. And we said, well, if they can't necessarily all be the same size as the market units, depending on what the target population is. So we put that in at external request. I agree with you that, it's sort of out there elsewhere, but we thought we ought to include it because of the comments that we received.
Yeah, since it's citing the planned residential developments bylaw, that is indeed where that is stated. And also, I just know as a practice, the planning board does work with developers to ensure that units do integrate, are distinguishable on the exterior. Interior finishes can be different.
And sizes can be different.
Yeah. Then the other thing was on the Assabet River Bluff. If I use that as a case study and evaluate your criteria with it, your bullet 7 on that list is to minimize the total cost of the town per unit for maintaining or adding units to the affordable housing stock. And that to me, implies that there is some financial plan, that's been set for the cost of the project and the cost per unit, that before you have the funds, that you commit the funds. And I still don't have a clear sense that has been done at Assabet Bluff. I mean, I just heard a quote tonight of about $316,000 or something per unit, but I don't understand how you've actually gotten to that number. I mean, there's the $1 million for the property and the duplex that's there, but then there's the yet unknown construction cost. And I'm sure we could make an estimate of what the construction cost of the 3 incremental units would be. But I can't imagine that 580,000 is that number. It would seem to have to be a much larger number.
That's all we've got left in our.
Well, yeah, and by the way, I'm very sorry that you don't have more money to work with. Okay, we should have a much more robust, housing trust that could go out and make big moves in a case like the availability of this property.
Right.
And we don't have the firepower, so to speak, to be able to execute on that right now. And we're actually off trying to grab money for wherever we can go. But I still don't, again, my biggest concern on this Assabet River Bluff is, for these 3 incremental units beyond the 2 that are already there, what's the incremental cost that we're paying to get them? And I don't think it's 316 per unit.
And we don't, the applicant has not provided us with any calculation. This is, the number you saw is my back of the envelope calculation, that if for the 5 units that have been produced, for the 5 affordable units that the project involves, 2 of them would be in an existing 2-family structure, which has an assessed value of $570,000, just as a how that pertains to, we don't have an appraised value, a separate appraised value for that structure or that portion of it. We know that there's $1 million is what it would cost for the two-family structure and the adjoining vacant land, to be created 1 acre parcel on which there's vacant land to put 3 more units. So, and by that token of $1 million with 5 units, it's, $1 million divided by 5 is 200 for starters, $200,000 per affordable unit, which we liked better than we liked a lot better than the initial calculation of a $2 million project cost for 2 affordable units, which in my mind is $1 million per affordable unit. The construction costs, we don't have that information. We can glean what it is, but it's not specific information that we have. So our approach is, well, we do anticipate that the CHDC will be coming back, assuming the property is acquired, that we will see CHDC again after they have issued a request for proposals, which is what their intent is, and then get back a proposal of how to develop the property to achieve a total of 5 units. I hope there can be some back of the envelope. I think it's in everyone's best interest, certainly before now in town meeting,
you can take
to have the back of the envelope calculations of what does it look like. My purpose here was to, number one, at least defend the money that we have left over, that it's not enough to float the boat for next year.
I'm just thinking of dollars per square foot times the expected number of square feet for these units. Yeah. And then also I expect that the duplex is going to need renovation.
Right.
And so when I add all that onto the cost, I come up with a much higher number.
And if the construction costs are anything like the Commonwealth Avenue unit.
Well, I doubt if they'll be $700 a square foot, but let's say
there's
$450.
There's no reason that it wouldn't be.
Or $500. No, there's a reason it wouldn't be.
It's being built by the same people with the same process.
I don't. No, it's not being built under the same conditions. No.
Without,
not being built by the authority.
Right. Authority. It would not be subject to your prevailing wage rules and could be done by a developer with, essentially market rate labor. Our goal was simply actually to be able to say no to $700,000 for 1 unit, for which we already own the land, and to look at what we are offered and say, that's a pretty good deal. Even if, you spend $750,000 on renovation, and remember, we're talking 2 in 1 building in addition, 750 or $1 million, it's not bad for 5 units. Even if you're looking at $2 million, we're talking $400,000 per unit, not 700. But this was just to give us the basis for saying, no, to quote Groucho Marx, that's too much for a duck. But we like this much better because we think we can deliver units for less aggregate. And it may be doing it collaboratively with Habitat, whatever, buying down additional units and development that's going up anyway, whatever that is. So it's a goal, but it's not a hard number.
Yeah, I guess I was just looking at that as a guideline that to minimize the total cost of the town per unit, you need to know what the total cost per unit is going to be. So that's.
And you know what I haven't said, and I want to make sure I say on this one, is one of the best ways to reduce the cost of developing a unit is to get surplus town property.
That is right.
Absolutely.
Your highest cost.
Yeah, just to say,
as long as it's not really tight on a slope right on a pond.
But that's the way it used to work. The town would donate the land and the state would pay the construction money. Mm-hmm. But certainly what you have to do now with the cost of land is minimize the land cost. And one way to do that is to buy land that is non-conforming in one way or another.
Well, or pay nothing for land.
Well, but
Even better.
assuming you're going to have to
I mean,
buy.
that's what is really kind of the new here is paying market rate for land.
Well, and
That's
and that can't work.
well, it's they're saying it will work,
Well,
but it's unprecedented.
it can only work if you use 40B to the maximum.
Well, no, they're not
Well,
doing that.
No, what I'm saying is,
we're
yes,
not
it can
debating
work.
that article right now, but we might be debating it later tonight. But right now,
Okay,
you know,
I'm done.
anyway,
with my
okay.
questions.
Are there questions for the Housing Trust on the interim policy guidelines? I think you've done a really good job putting everything together, and it will serve you well when you're going to do the permanent guidelines.
Right, absolutely. And appreciate the questions have kept us on our toes too. So.
I think I saw Mike Lawson, name flash. Did you have any comments to add, Mike?
No, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you looking carefully at these guidelines. We've worked very hard to accomplish it, and your input's been very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I have similar questions to Matt about the Assabet Buff project, but that's a different discussion that I'm sure we'll be debating shortly. So I think we are ready for a motion here.
So we need a motion. We need to approve this document
Yes,
for the
yeah,
trust.
yes, the town bylaw specifically says that our guidelines are subject to your prior approval.
Okay, so
So
moved.
exactly what of all this material that we have are the guidelines?
It's
Is
this
it the package?
document that was in the
Five-page
packet.
document.
It was a 5-page document. The one that says goals and then, background goals, guidelines.
3 pages of text
Criteria.
and then two tables.
Susan, can you show Henry your copy?
All right,
Yeah, he's got, yeah,
I
he
see
said,
It says interim policy
Yep.
guidelines.
That's it.
Yeah.
it comes right after my cover memo, yeah.
Okay. Move to approve the interim policy guidelines for the use of funds as recommended by the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
A lot of work.
Thanks very much, appreciate your support. We still want to talk about funding at some point, so,
Definitely, yeah.
but we'll take yes for an answer tonight. so.
Okay.
Thank you, thanks all.
All right. Now we are going to move on to a discussion with our CIO, Jason Bolger. We have 3 topics, I understand. The database that Carrie mentioned, the broadband reorganization, and then 5G. And we're running kind of late, but maybe we'll see how we can do on this. Why don't we start with probably the database? Jason is attending by Zoom, I guess?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Jason. Thanks for joining us. So we are all very appreciative that we're going to have a new database. And I think we're interested in learning what access the select board is going to have and what access the committee chairs might have to either the database or some kind of regular reports, because I think that would help all of us do our jobs better.
Absolutely. I can speak a little bit about that. Our town clerk, Kari Tari, has been evaluating different solutions for databases to track board and committee appointments and create better and more timely reports on people who have applied, expressed interest to serve on a board or committee, and to better track all the different attributes that are needed in her role. I sat on those along with Chris Carmody and several members from the clerk's department to evaluate different software solutions. We were really optimistic that maybe our website provider, Civic Plus, would have a solution that could be integrated into the website where we can capture that information and just tie it in. But unfortunately, their solution is not ready yet, which also limits probably the outside control that people will have for, say, board and committee members to have direct access. We are still exploring how that could work, but for now, it will just be more timely reports and more accurate information through better tracking. But this is a system that's in place in several other communities, and it's going to be live soon. They have been testing it, but they're going to actually start using it in the next couple of weeks. And it's a completely new software package to the town of Concord. Some of the things that it allows them to do is generate appointment letters, maintain a separate volunteer database, track the oath of office, ethics and open meeting law acknowledgements. And then some of the reports they'll be able to create include active members of boards and committees, appointment history by member or board, vacancies, and more. I know one of the issues is when somebody has an interest in serving, it's really helpful to have a quick list of the vacancies so that you can know where they might be able to have a good fit, but sometimes that can be a challenge with today's technology. So this is going to allow very easy access to that type of information. And I checked with Kari, and it is going to be live for the reappointment schedule in May or June. So that process will go through this software, and it will automatically be able to send updates to people to get information or to check on their status of their ethics training and conflict of interest training and things like that. So
Excellent. So it sounds like this will be administered in the town clerk's office. Is that right?
yes, yep, all the town clerk's personnel will have access to the software, as well as members from the town manager's office. Again, we're trying to see if there might be some way to integrate this securely to board and committee chairs, maybe to make sure that their information is up to date. But it's going to be a process that's much farther ahead than our current solution. So we'll take what we can get here, and then if we can have something that's more integrated into our website down the road, then we'll definitely pursue that.
Okay, I think one of the things that would help would be for select board liaisons to be able to get some kind of a report, monthly or quarterly, so we can see. A lot of times somebody has applied for, let's say, 3 different committees, and somebody might not know about that, but they know they have a vacancy in a committee, and it would just be really helpful to get some kind of regular reports. And if you're not ready to give them to the chairs of all the committees yet, at least the select board liaisons should get some kind of a report. Can we maybe start doing that this summer?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll pass that on to Kari. I know that she plans on giving reports to anybody who's interested. It's not the reports that I think we're concerned about. It's just the direct access to edit and maintain the database. But definitely the reports, she plans to make that available to as many people as possible.
Great.
Yeah, also having an integrated solution with the website would really be helpful. For example, I find occasionally that the rosters for our town boards and committees are out of date as published on the website. I also find that, like, even with the liaison assignments, who is our select board liaison to the West Concord Advisory Committee? Who is? Anybody? Nobody.
Nope.
We don't have a liaison to the West Concord Advisory Committee, apparently.
I found another one that we don't have a liaison to the other day, and I don't even remember what committee it is right now. But yeah.
So, I mean, this is the other aspect of a database, is kind of ticking and tying the data and understanding where there are gaps.
Well,
And
there are committees we don't even know that exist,
apparently.
and
So-
for which we do not know what their charges
Yeah,
are.
but I mean, this came up the other day when, there was this discussion of some changes proposed for Rideout Park, and the Recreation Commission is going to look at these. And I said, well, perhaps the West Concord Advisory Committee should as well, and we should talk to the liaison who is, and there wasn't.
Right.
So,
Well, maybe because it's a subcommittee of the planning board, so planning board, I don't know, but yeah.
And then I sent a note to, I hope, who's the chair of the West Concord Advisory Committee, at least according to the website. And I haven't heard back. So I don't know if it went into the ether.
Right. So right now we have a real patchwork system where we have the vacancies on the agendas. At the chair's breakfast, everybody announces their vacancies if they remember. Then I try to convey that to, I'm not sure who, maybe Robin or Chris, and maybe it gets on the website. So I think Matt's right. We need software, but we also need a people system so that we know who to convey it to. What are the chairs supposed to do when they have a vacancy? Who do they talk to? What do the select board liaisons do? What does the staff do? We have to kind of revamp the whole system.
Well, Terry, the question should not be, what are we going to get? The question is, what do we want them to produce for us?
Who is them? The committee
IT
chair, the staff,
department.
right?
So,
Well, right, but it
so
may,
the way we're phrasing it now is, well, are we going to get access, or is it going to have this facility? I think what we should be trying to say, at least, is these are the criteria that we need to have satisfied to have a system that's useful for us, who are the the executives of this town, and let's see if we can work together to get something that's going to meet our needs as well as the needs of the town staff.
okay, that's a really good point. So taking that approach, let me rephrase what Matt just said and ask Jason, is it possible, Jason, for this system to interface with the website so that the website is automatically updated when the software is updated, or does there have to be a person in the middle who has to retype? How do we get there?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is that we did go through a process like Henry described, which is anytime you're looking for a software or solution, you need to understand the user requirements of the system and make sure you understand what your needs are before you purchase something. That is the process that we did in this search, and we did have as a requirement that we wanted something that integrated automatically with the website. But as I mentioned, unfortunately for our current website, they are not there yet. They are still a few years away from that. They promised beta testing next year, but that solution seemed too far to wait for something that with a system that's as broken as it is today. So we understand where there might be a couple gaps, but we do understand the requirements, and we will put processes in place to fill those gaps. So today, I think the problem is without a single system of record, as Matt said, it's unclear where you're supposed to go to get the actual true information. If the town clerk maintains that, then we just need to put in a process in place so that we know, X person in the town manager's office is going to be responsible for keeping the website up to date. And now that they have a way to get accurate and timely changes from that database, it'll be a lot easier for somebody to do that. That's been the problem to date, is that without everybody able to access the system, nobody knows when changes have been made or when things have been updated. So this will solve many of our problems, but you're right, there are still going to be a couple gaps, and that's kind of the nature of software, is that it's never going to fit perfectly, but we think we know where those gaps are, and we're going to do what we can to make sure we have systems in place to address those. But we did go through a search, as Henry described.
Susan?
I had a question, Jason. Would it also automatically update? There's an inconsistency in committee websites with the existence of the committee members at all, or Matt mentioned them being current. Is there a way that will happen? And the second question is, I know that the town website that advertises committee vacancies is not current, and that I'm assuming that's going to be part of the plan.
Exactly, yeah. So once the system is in place, then the people who have access to edit those web pages will be able to go in at whatever interval the board or Carrie sets and be able to update that information. There's also a way for the software or for you to poll the software for changes. So we will be able to see when this information changes. To date, that's been one of the issues, is that one person may get notice that somebody has resigned from a board, and they may file it in a certain place, but it doesn't really kick off a notification to other users. And we hope that this system will alleviate that issue.
So if I could just reiterate, unfortunately, there is no solution that works with our current web page that will automatically integrate the data. I think what Jason said is it's probably at least a year out. It's maybe longer. So that is going to take person power to keep that updated.
Right, so you'll look at a report, compare it with what's on the website, type in.
Right, and unfortunately, that's where we are at this point in time. The senior administrative assistant in the town manager's office is the staff person that is responsible for sort of the front end for receiving the interest forms, either in hard copy or electronic copy, and is working with you and with me to make sure that appointments are made to the various boards and committees. And then the town clerk's office is on the other end. Once an appointment has been made, they're managing those appointments, making sure that that appointees are sworn in, that they've met all of their other legal requirements. And again, using one system, so this is a huge step forward, even though it's not going to take us exactly where we would like to be. And I would just also end with the fiscal 23 budget actually includes increasing a part-time position in the town clerk's office to full-time in recognition that we need to dedicate additional resources to managing boards and committees and providing resources, because the model that we had before was not working particularly well. And then with all of the changes in elections and the processing of all of the different types of election opportunities or voting opportunities people have, it's an overwhelming task. So we do have an additional half-time FTE in the town clerk's office to help manage.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, then you said the senior administrative officer in the town manager's office does the front end, and the town clerk's office works with the swearing in and the open meeting law and the ethics and all of those things. And where is the people power for the part of updating the committees onto the website?
Yeah, so we will have to decide between the town manager's office and town clerk's office who will have primary responsibility there. It really, we'll have to see what the workload is like, and it may be that both offices are responsible for that.
Okay,
Is it worth saying that if we do adopt a new system, a new database or a new spreadsheet, that it should be one that could be integrated into a website when the website is upgraded, so that that website could call the information from the database or from the spreadsheet that has all of that information on it, and we don't have to do that piece of it again.
Sure, I think that's a Jason question. I'm not sure if you heard that.
Yeah, no, I did. So again, that was like one of our core requirements, along with, security and access to the people that we needed, was this integration. Over a decade ago, working for another municipality, I recognized that this need to integrate the back office management of persons and board committee members and the front end view of that on the website just didn't exist. And I worked with a team of developers to actually write software to do that. So I'm very familiar with the process and the need and the importance of doing that. It just physically didn't exist now, and we weren't able to write that software now. And we know that our website vendor today is interested in developing that, and they're in the process, the early stages of developing that. So as soon as something exists that can integrate that without manual processes, we're going to jump on that.
Yeah, I don't think we want to develop and maintain our own software if we can avoid it, and that's what we would essentially have to do, I think, Henry, to be able to automate this process today. So we probably need to wait for the vendor. And in the meantime, sneaker net.
But what we're going to do is flag this and look forward to the implementation in May. And then We'll check in with you maybe in July and see how it's going. We'll put it on our agenda and see how well it's going and what tweaks it might need from our point of view. So thanks a lot for identifying the needs and working on this. It's a good step forward, and it doesn't do everything, but let's move on now to the broadband reorganization.
Absolutely, thank you. So as you may know, the Director of Telecom, who oversees the Concord Broadband Division, left the town of Concord in mid-February. In my role, I've worked very closely with the broadband team since I began. For over a year, I've attended their biweekly progress status meetings, and I've worked with them to procure hardware and assisted with security upgrades, or conducted audits and training. I provided technical assistance during outages or in preparation for hardware changes. So I've been very closely involved in broadband. When the Director of Telecom left, I was asked to step in and fill a gap there and sort of provide immediate assistance to that team and support them. And so I've done that now for a few weeks, and I'll just give you an update of what's been going on for the past few weeks. So we made a lot of progress, fortunately, on addressing projects that were already in progress and procuring additional hardware, including multiple servers, fiber inspecting and cleaning tools, and safety equipment. I've conducted process reviews to determine where we can improve efficiency in the department, or the division rather. I've conducted a needs assessment and worked with the telecom techs and the network engineers to put together plans to complete the network infrastructure upgrades and also address the backlog of installs. I've attended 2 of the fiber broadband completion task force meetings to provide input and support for their goals. I've also been working on CRM, customer relationship management tools, to better communicate with the users who've expressed interest in getting broadband. It's very rare that you have a business where so many customers knock on your door and would love your service, but you're unable to give it to them because of COVID, backlog, et cetera. I think that it's really important that we maintain those relationships and provide updates on the status of those installs so that customers aren't waiting for weeks or months without any information or update on their installation. I've also worked with the customer service division in the light plant to get their feedback on what's working and what's not working. And we've already implemented different processes to capture more data on intake and outtake of when people sign up or when they leave service. I've worked with them to retool our terms and conditions. That's a process that's been going on for quite a while, and it's well overdue to be done and distributed. And we've also worked on updating the broadband website that hasn't been updated in quite a while. We're reviewing and preparing to re-advertise the request for proposals for a help desk. This is the first line of defense when people have issues at broadband. They call the help desk, which is a third party that integrates with our team. And that contract expires at the end of April. So that RFP was out there and did not receive any responses. So we're working on relisting that. And I've reached out to vendors who can assist with splicing projects that have been on hold due to the winter and the cold weather, and also to help address and plan to get through the backlog of installs. So after many discussions with Carrie and Dave Wood, the director of the light plant, we've decided to return to the previous model where the CIO or CITO oversees the management of the broadband division and works closely with the light plant and all the divisions that I mentioned, the financial division, the customer service, and also Dave, Joe, and all the other engineers and line crew. It really is a team effort, but we think that with the amount of technical knowledge that goes into running broadband, that model is going to work well. And I can tell you, Dave and I have a really collaborative relationship, and we sit 10 feet from each other. And I've been involved in broadband since the day that I started, and I think that this is going to be a good model going forward. So We have also decided to list the Director of Telecom position as soon as possible. We're making a few minor modifications, not really to the job description in so much as just clarifying how the duties will be conducted so that we get what we want out of that job position. I can tell you, I'm really optimistic about where broadband is and the potential that it has. I feel like I've seen this division from kind of within it and the assistance that I provided, but also from the outside. So I have kind of a good, unique take on what I think we need to do to move forward and make broadband succeed. So, overall, I can tell you the goal is to peel back the curtain a little bit and make sure that the public and the select board and the light board are, very understanding of the direction of broadband and what we're doing, what we're working on, how our priorities are aligned with the goals of the town. We did have a big outage last year, and we've made some steps to remedy the situation that caused that, but we still have more to do, and not only in terms of upgrading infrastructure, but also communication. We really need to build back the public's trust and so that they understand that this is a utility and an essential service and that we treat it that way. We have been installing tools to better monitor the network so that we are alerted to problems well before even users are. And we've taken steps to eliminate the reliance on the town's network for broadband. Initially, broadband relied on the town's data centers for running the equipment and servers that is used to manage the end customer. And that worked well because we had these enterprise data centers. But if the town experiences any issues, that then spills over to the broadband customers. So we have now eliminated that reliance on the town's network. And we've also been working on strengthening communications between the customer service division, the help desk, and the broadband team. We found that in the past that communication just didn't work as well as it should have to make sure that everybody was on the same page and was giving accurate and timely information to people who called in or had questions. I think when broadband was created, there was this proposal and wide support from the town, and then broadband just kind of took off, and it's been going in its direction for a while. But I think it's really important that we understand that broadband needs the public's buy-in and direction from time to time. I'm going to work really hard to make sure that through meetings like this, presentations at the light board, listening sessions, public hearings, whatever we can do to get the input from the public, we can take that and make sure that our direction is in line with what people expect of this. Broadband is a really unique enterprise in that we have competition, right? There's no competition for water or sewer in town. People have no choice but to take what Concord gives them there. But in terms of broadband service, people do have competition, and they have choices, and that competition is only going to grow as we have additional satellite internet offerings or 5G or other technologies. So broadband needs to be competitive, but it also needs to make sure that it has its core values and core mission, and that the town, consistently weighs in on what that is, because as technology changes, as the market changes, and as our need for broadband changes, those goals may change too. So I'm also going to be doing a lot more in-depth reports to the light board every month, and also be providing a whole broadband section in the town manager's report at the select board meetings, so that there can be more information just repeatedly getting out there. We're also exploring other ways to market and provide outreach for broadband, including things like newsletters and updating the website and regrowing our social media presence. And when it comes to financial stability, this is a question that the task force, the broadband completion task force is asking, and that the public is asking, is what is broadband? Is broadband an essential service? Do we want to prioritize getting broadband to every parcel in town, every resident, every business? Do we want broadband to be a business? Do we want it to be profitable? These are questions that need to be addressed so that when we create our division, it's in line with those goals. But I can tell you, we have an absolutely fantastic group of people who work in broadband. We have our 4th fiber tech that started today. His name is Ali Hussein. We have a total of 4 telecom technicians or fiber techs who are the ones who actually splicing fiber and doing installs and troubleshooting with end users. We have 2 network engineers who work on the network side of things to make sure that everything is up to snuff in terms of the service delivery on the back end. And these are the people who are out on Christmas Eve splicing fiber when rodents chew through cables, and spending hours on the phone troubleshooting end users' computers or devices when they're having an issue. So I'm really happy to be a part of this team. I'm excited about kind of this next chapter in broadband, and I'm open to any feedback and participation from the public or the board or anybody. And so that's kind of the remarks I prepared on broadband.
Thank you. That's a lot that you've done in the last few weeks. And we're really happy to have you in this position. And I know the Fiber Broadband Task Force is really happy to have you at their meetings as well. Are there some questions from the board? Linda.
So Jason, thank you for that great overview. You started to address this towards the end of your remarks, and you also mentioned at the beginning, but if you just go again, give me a little isolated description of the structure in terms of positions, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So within the division of broadband, there's a director of telecom, and the positions that all of the other positions report to that position. There are 4 telecom technicians. One of them is a senior telecom technician, and then there are 2 network engineers. So there are a total of 7 personnel in the broadband division.
And then there's yourself and?
There's myself and me and I. There in IT, there are 3 information systems technicians and 1 GIS analyst.
And 1?
GIS analyst, for Geographic Information Systems analyst.
Okay, thank you for that. You also referenced on your long list of things you're tackling, which I can only appreciate. You mentioned about a plan to address the backlog, and without going into a lot of detail, could you just hit on some highlights there?
Absolutely. So, we've talked about this at length, that in the winter, it's very difficult to splice fiber. Below 40 degrees, fiber becomes very brittle. So this isn't a comfort thing. This is really just the nature of the glass in the fiber, that at these temperatures, as you bend it to try to splice it, it physically breaks. Typically, when you install a fiber network, you leave enough slack in the fiber to pull that fiber into a van that can be heated so that the fibers don't break when they're spliced. Unfortunately, most of Concord's fiber was not installed in this way. So that means it's extremely difficult to conduct installations in the winter. So typically in the winter, other activities have been prioritized, like working on inventory, doing the last mile. So if in the lead up to winter, the fiber can be run to the outside of a house, then service can be brought inside of a house or business. And it's also a time for training, upgrading equipment on the inside of networks, and just troubleshooting and building documentation and doing, updating our mapping, networks and things like that. So in winter, historically, broadband has slowed down, or the installs have slowed down, in part because of the winter, in part because of the long COVID cessation that we had on installations. There is a backlog of a couple hundred people, and these are people who have submitted interest forms on our website and who are tracked in a database. And I can tell you that what we're doing now is we are enlisting the help of 2 separate fiber installers who would be the ones to splice the fiber from the pole and bring it to the residence or business. And then our telecom techs would be able to focus on the last mile, where they install the hardware in the customer's house or business, and then light up the service. And so what we're trying to do now is an analysis and a cost benefit analysis, so that we can say, if we spend X dollars, we can get the backlog done in X months, and then we can get some input on those plans. It wouldn't be prudent to spend $1 million to eliminate the backlog in 3 weeks, but it also isn't going to be prudent to wait 3 years to get the backlog done. So, as we've done in the past, we've usually kind of given an update to the light board as to the status of where things are to get their opinion on things. But I can tell you this would be one of those things that I'd be working with Carrie and Dave on, and determining what we think a good rate is, and also working with Matt and the financial team at the light plant to understand the impact on operations and costs and what the budget has for speeding those up. But the goal is to do them as rapidly as we possibly can. And where we can't do them rapidly, to communicate with the customer so that they have an estimated time of installation. And that we've also oscillated between doing first in and first out versus a more coordinated plan based on clusters of interested parties. But I think it's really important to document whatever plan we're going to go with, stick to it, and communicate it to the public and get some buy-in, because it's a fair question to ask why, if you submitted your interest form a year ago and your neighbor submitted theirs 2 days ago and they're getting it and you're not. That's a fair point. But it's also not good if we're adding a month onto the addressing the backlog because we're running all over town and not doing them in a systematic way. So we have to strike a balance between those things. So those are the types of conversations that we're having among the team, is trying to figure out what our priorities are, when our start date is to aggressively tackle the backlog with the weather, and determine the ratio of third-party vendors that will assist with addressing the backlog.
Thank you for all that. It really sounds like it's a whole new strategic approach to analyzing where you are and what it might take to get it done. So thank you for that.
Other questions, comments?
Sure. I just was curious, given the competitive environment, whether you anticipate offering surface upgrades to the customer base. I mean, this is a case in which the competitors are increasing throughput numbers and or adjusting their costs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you, just looking at the service speeds, my gut is that they're going to increase with especially little to no cost in the lower tiers. I think that some of the strategies we need to think about is how we can get broadband to lower income residences. I know Carlin has made a request and thought about using ARPA funds to help low income households get fiber for a lower cost. So that's something that we want to keep in mind. But again, historically, I think that sometimes the decisions were made, like, oh, the competition's doing this, let's adjust our speeds in this way. I like to have a more systematic and scientific approach, and I want to look to see what those impacts are going to be on customers and how rate changes, even considering lowering rates, is going to impact adoption and revenue. So definitely, I think that 35 megabits per second is our lowest tier today. I think that is a very dated tier. I think that 50 is probably a better lower tier. And I think that if you look at some of the higher tiers, I think that some people may like to pay more to get a faster speed. 300 megabits per second is the fastest speed that we offer residential service today. People are already asking for gigabit speeds. We need to look at both the impact on the network and the service we can deliver, and also the resilience of having adequate backup circuits so that we can provide a complete backup if one of our main providers were to go down. If we oversubscribe our network, when we have an issue with a carrier, we're going to have a problem with a sizable portion of our customers. So we want to make sure that we can grow sustainably, but also remain competitive. So yes, I think that speed increases are definitely in the horizon.
Well, you also, I think, have the case of aging customer endpoint equipment, right? I mean, in a lot of cases, some of the devices you installed they have limited capacity, or they're just reaching end of life. I don't know what your plan is for upgrading those as well as.
Yeah, so fortunately, I mean, in the cable world, with coaxial cable, there is more of a limit to that. A lot of the ONTs that we have been installing, even the older ones, can still sustain those speeds. I have to check to see if they're all gigabit, but I know that a large portion of the ones that we have still do that. But you're right, they do have a lifespan, and we do replace them obviously when there's an issue, but we do also get kind of warnings when a device is reaching the end of its useful life, because it starts to generate issues and signal loss, and so we do proactively replace those. We don't anticipate having to replace them en masse and just saying, we have to replace 500 of these this year. Customers do rotate in and out, and we do end up with a large stock of gently used ONTs. So I don't anticipate we'll have to replace them all at once, but more than the equipment in the customer's home or business, the issue is there can only be so many customers at such a speed on a given circuit or PON before we have to move and reallocate them, because let's say each circuit has a 10 gig max, and if you happen to have 9 customers in one street that want really fast service, and then you get somebody else, you may need to move them to another circuit. And that's fine if nobody changes their service, but if all of a sudden you've expected all of these people are going to be a very low bandwidth, and then suddenly they all jump 10 times in their bandwidth, then you may have to reallocate some people when you upgrade them. But we definitely take those things into consideration.
Okay.
Thank you. And related to that, I guess I've been wondering, since the broadband outage, it sounds like you've been taking a lot of steps, but you said there are steps to be taken still. Are we in a better position now if there's an outage? Do we understand how to quickly come back? Or do we need to make some big capital investments? Are we fully staffed if there's a big outage, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I can tell you, we worked on a really detailed post-incident analysis report that we gave to the select board and the light board after that incident. We have achieved a lot of those goals in terms of documentation, improved staffing. Now we have 2 network engineers instead of 1. We have third parties that are more familiar with our network and can step in to assist should we have issues that weren't lined up before. But we also do have some infrastructure upgrades that are planned that haven't taken place yet. They were budgeted for this year. Remember that the light plant and the broadband division are on a calendar year budget, not a fiscal year budget. So those have recently passed by the light board, and those are equipment purchases that are expected soon. There are some changing topology designs as a result of new technology that has come out that might greatly simplify the design of our equipment and eliminate points of failure. So we are moving on some of those things, but not all of them have been fully implemented. I can tell you we have implemented new equipment, new power equipment, and a new server, and we've just purchased some standalone DHCP servers that will be co-located at the substation where all the other broadband equipment is and are not reliant on the town's network. So all of these things we did as a result of the lessons learned from that outage. And we tried to dive deep during that outage and see not just the things that went directly wrong with the outage, but also in the response and the communication. So we did put together a communication plan. We do have a policy on who gets notified and when and how when there is an issue now. We also are a lot more proactive with notifications when there's maintenance, even when we don't anticipate customer impact. We had the unfortunate situation where we were assured by a vendor that doing something would not impact customers even for a second, and it did for a few minutes. And we understand that all of those issues contribute to a lack of trust in broadband. So we have a lot more documented outage windows and communication plans to the public for when we need to do any maintenance that could possibly affect the network in any way. Even if it's not going to, we'd rather over communicate in those cases. So I'd say we are in a much, much, much better place now, but we still have a little bit ways to go.
Thank you. So what I'm thinking now is, in the interest of time, that what we might do is put off the 5G conversation since we're running quite late. And
Sure.
that's
Well, because,
really
I
kind
mean,
of
there was a
long,
significant
long-
amount of material that was provided. I thought it was actually very
It
excellent.
is excellent. I think it's probably going to be quite a long discussion. And I'm thinking that, well, it depends on, the pleasure of the board, but one of the things that we have to do is start taking position on town meeting articles. We have 3 nights to do that, tonight and 2 other nights. So it really depends. I guess we have 3 choices. We can do the whole discussion on 5G and meet pretty late tonight, or we could do a very brief overview of 5G and maybe continue another day. Well, it's up to the board.
I'm also mindful of all the preparation work that maybe Jason has
Yes.
put into this for tonight.
Yeah, and I can say it's not a small issue, and it is going to raise a lot of questions.
Right.
I think that there is a sense of urgency with some of this, because if the town doesn't have a policy in place, then the regulatory review that certain carriers may need to do will not apply if we don't have that in place. And our current wireless facility bylaw does not address some of these new issues. But that being said, if what I just stated can be on your minds, and we can pick this up at a later date, it's really up to the board.
Well, perhaps we should do maybe like a 10-minute overview of it, because we're not going to be able to make a decision tonight, I don't think. It's a very complicated
I want to
topic.
make sure there's enough time.
Okay, but
to the-
I actually wanted to say, it seems like what Jason has given us is, first of all, a pretty comprehensive set of background documents about
Yes.
both the FCC's position as well as the things that other municipalities have done. And I believe that he's proposing to draft a bylaw for us
Yes.
that would not be the same as these others, but that perhaps would be modeled, and this I'm just going to tip my hand, modeled on the Medford interim policy. And I'd say, let's give him that instruction, and we don't lose time.
Mhm.
And we would then be able to review a draft bylaw, at a subsequent meeting as soon as that might be able to be
Is that a motion?
drafted. Well, I don't know that we even need a motion for something like that. I think it would just be a suggestion that
Okay,
our
so-
town staff work on this.
So let me just clarify, there's several things we have to do with 5G. The most important of which is what Matt just said. We want to instruct Jason, I assume, to get going on writing a draft and bringing it to us. And we also, though, I think are going to need a little tutorial, most of us, on what is 5G, why is it so special, what's the difference between 4G and 5G, and what, because I know there are people out there who oppose it, there are people who want it, there's a lot of people from the public who might want to speak on it. So there's that to do, and that part maybe we could put off until the same night that we have the draft proposal from Jason. And then I know that Carlin Reed is here, who wants to say something about the proposal from the PEG access point of view as well. So there are several aspects to it. Carlin, can you be very brief about what you're looking for?
Yeah. Yes, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End, Chair of the PEG Access Committee. I've been talking to Jason about the options available here, and I agree with him that there is some urgency in getting a 5G policy in place. I agree with Matt that Medford is a really good example, but if you look at the date of the proposed that Medford has, that needs to be updated to reflect current FCC orders, one that was issued in November of 2020, which changed some aspects of it, and some other part of that same docket are still under consideration.
but I'm happy to work with Jason. I'm sure there are others on my committee and others in town who may want to help him as he sees fit, and we're willing to assist as necessary.
Right, and you also, when we get to it at the future meeting, you also have some suggestions about the fee structure, and we're not going to have time to go over all that tonight, but.
It's part of the whole package. There are a whole bunch of things, but I'm happy to help Jason if he wants it.
But I'm curious, I mean, when it comes to 5G, establishing a 5G bylaw, I don't understand how the PEG Access Advisory Board really has a role. I mean, it's great to get another set of eyes, reviewing any draft bylaw that we have, but I don't see that as part of the.
There are individuals who happen to be on this committee who have some expertise in this area, and it's in that context that these individuals have told me, hey, I'd be willing to help if there's some request for it. As far as assigning it directly to the PEG Access Committee, our committee hasn't even talked about this particular set of papers. That's a little premature at this point. Right now, he needs help, he needs it now, and we're willing to give it.
Yeah, I think as individuals that could make sense.
And that's fine.
Right.
That's fine,
right,
absolutely.
Right. And then also the thing about the fees, we can do it at the end.
Yeah. And then, I mean, as far as the business about the difference between 4 and 5G and whether 5G poses a health risk and all of those things, I mean, there are a lot of discussion points around that. Having a 5G policy is almost independent of all those things. It's really about having some control over 5G installation, look and feel, and position, when right now we really don't have any policy. And to quote the KP Law memo, it says that absent a written published regulation or policy applied in a non-discriminatory manner, municipalities may be limited in the type of issues that they may address in the context of the general laws.
Right.
So we do need to get this going.
So, Matt, I couldn't agree with you more. I brought this up in 2019.
Right.
Yeah. And I would just say that I agree with you, Matt, about I think we should give Jason the direction to start on the draft. I would just also recommend, if you haven't looked at it, to look at the Andover policy, which I think does reflect more recent legislation. Okay. Anything else?
And, so I think, does everyone on the board agree that we should give Jason that direction to bring us something? Jason, how long do you think it would be before you would come back to us?
That's a good question. I think that with some of the policies that are out there, using that as a starting point, I don't think it would be long before we could circulate a draft. But I do think it's important to get, as you mentioned, Terry, public input, and also there are some differences, and there are some ways where municipalities can be more aggressive, or they can, fall under the safe harbor provision. So, we do want to make sure that the will of the board and the people informs the policy. But in terms of something that protects the town's interests and does what many other towns do, I think we could do it pretty quickly in a few weeks. So, you can work with Carrie to find time on the agenda, and we can work to make it happen.
Okay, very good. I'm going to pencil it in for April, and if you're not going to be ready by then, just let us know. And I think we all agree it's important, and we're looking to your expertise to help us with it. Much appreciated. And I think you're right. At that point, we will need, I remember, Linda, when we did discuss it in 2019, and there was considerable public input, and I think we're going to have to take on that piece as well.
I think it's been on our select board goals the past couple of years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
So it's
right.
good that we're finally getting to it.
Finally, we're getting to it, yes. Okay, great. Thank you, Jason, for everything. It seems like you're on top of many different projects, and we really appreciate it. So at this point, we're going to move on to the letter to Fish and Game about the trout restocking at White Pond. Susan, you brought this to my attention, and I'm not sure if we have somebody with us from the White Pond Committee.
Beth Kelly.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here, Susan.
Okay. Do you want to explain the reasoning behind your request?
Sure, I can. Just as Beth Kelly, I'm the co-chair of the White Pond Advisory Committee. We had sent previously in 2020, 19, and 20 letters to the Fish and Game Commission regarding trout stocking, specifically rainbow trout stocking, which has been in a number of articles, and I've sent that to you. I don't know if it's been distributed.
Yes.
Great, good. So I won't go into the science unless you ask me, but there's evidence that rainbow trout specifically are a contributor to potential escalation in harmful algal blooms, which we've obviously had as the pond was closed most of the summer. So we had sent 2 letters, and in fact, at the select board meeting in late fall, we had Senator Mike Barrett as a guest, and he actually sent a letter to Fish and Game. Fish and Game responded to us and said they had responded over a year and a half earlier, but I think through the transition in the town, maybe the select board members, we were not, nobody had given us this memo and the response, and Stephen Crane submitted that to us in December of 2021. So approximately a year earlier, they did respond. Subsequent to that, there's been more published data that supports the, the effects of algal blooms in ponds, and specifically due to potential planktivore type behavior by rainbow trout. So this letter that is drafted, and it's in the packet that you have today, is specifically asking Fish and Game to not stock rainbow trout. We're not saying all trout, just rainbow trout for the spring stocking. And additionally, we have plans to be doing some studying, some necropsies of other trout, the rainbow trout that have been there earlier in the year with our limnologists, so we can do some more studies and try to prove it even for ourselves. And I can tell you that we know that the zooplankton have been almost non-existent in the pond over the years. They've been decreasing steadily. So we think that this is really important for us to get some kind of impact on reducing the cyanobacteria blooms. So the stocking occurs in the spring based on historical data from Fish and Game, usually like the 3rd, 4th week in March, and they usually start with the rainbow. So we really want to get this letter out in front of them now. And we do reference the letters and to at least try to not get those in this first stocking in the spring. So that's kind of high level. No, I'm talking fast because I know you're running over. Just, hit me with some questions.
Thank you. And we do remember discussing this when Senator Barrett was with us. So are there any questions from the board? Okay. I think we have a motion for this then, that we're sending this letter?
Yes.
Okay.
So move to approve the chair to write a letter on behalf of the town seeking prevent the stocking of rainbow trout in White Pond.
Second.
For this year.
This year, yeah, in 2022.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Beth and Josh and Susan. That letter is in the packet, and I have the hard copy here that I'm signing, and it will go out hopefully tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much, Select Board.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to a brief update on the Keyes Road Cell Tower, and I think we have Kate Hodges with us for that.
Yep. Hi there. This is Kate Hodges, Deputy Town Manager. So it's very brief. As you know, we've been experiencing connectivity issues in the downtown area specifically for years, and we had issued several RFPs for wireless providers to propose additional tower locations to help improve. In most recent past, the board asked that the town explore the idea of creating a tower site at the existing Keyes Road campus. We were in contact with Verizon Wireless, who was the most interested in some type of cellular siting downtown, as they had been unable to secure a location. So on December 10th, if I can share my screen, Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So on December 10th, Verizon did what was called the balloon test, and they hired a crane operator. And the crane parked behind the 141 Kais Road, or the DPLM building. And they floated a very large balloon, approximately 110 feet from the ground. The flag was placed on the boom of the crane at the 90-foot and 100-foot marks. And then the 24-inch wide balloon was attached to the very top of the crane, so the tip of the balloon was around 112 feet in the air. This is the picture from the North Bridge. So the idea was if the flags or the balloon was noticeable from the North Bridge, it would likely result in either our local, state, or historical regulatory boards rejecting the location site because they're able to cite that it might have a negative effect on the historical significance. This is the photo that I took from the center and the highest point on the North Bridge. Can anyone see the balloon?
No, I could only see the pointer that was up there. And at first I thought that was the balloon and I was quite alarmed.
So, can you see the balloon now?
Yes.
So if I were to zoom out, now that you know where it is, I would imagine it catches your eye a bit more.
Not really. Then again,
That's very good
far away
news.
from the screen. Yeah. No, that's very good news.
So this is, you cannot see the flags, which was really good news. And they were blue and yellow. Something that I think is important is that we took the time to create a different version of it. This is the same picture because whatever cell tower that we put up would not be bright red. And so what we did was we took out the black balloon to see if the location, which is right here, would look more like a stick or a piece of tree without foliage on it, and it appears to. So that was the feeling. I met with somebody from the national park. They felt that it wasn't significant enough that it was alarming, but obviously that if Verizon wanted to pursue an application, they would have to go through the process through the Zoning Board of Appeals and through both the state and local historical commissions, but did not dismiss the idea out of hand. Since that time, though, Verizon has been approached by an entity that they say is a private entity that wanted to explore leasing space for their equipment. And so I was able to speak with the Verizon representative who we've been working with for the past 8 years or so. And he informed me that Verizon is taking the party line that they're not ruling out the site or any site, including Kais Road, but their ability to pursue a location which is less likely to be denied or even receive scrutiny from at the state level or even local level for historical significance would be more appealing to them. And so right now they're pursuing, looking into getting a lease agreement with that private entity, which he said is not public information right now. So I don't know much more about that. And we're in a holding pattern. If that doesn't work out, or they feel that if it does work out, but they need additional connectivity, they'll be back.
Okay.
Wow. After all this time.
Yeah. All right. Any questions?
It looks like a promising site. I mean, it's. I'm hopeful that we can get something.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Well, is there any way that we can, I mean, if their reluctance is to not have to go through the process and then get turned down, is there any way that we can run the process and say, we have the permits, you build it?
I think we would have to be proposing to build a tower. I mean, as the town.
Well,
I mean, we could build the tower as the town and lease the space to providers. I mean, that is
No, I don't
technically
think we want to.
possible.
I
It's
don't
just that I don't know if we want to be in that line of business.
No, but I mean, is there any way that we can, as I say, obtain the permits?
But I think you only
And
can
then
obtain the
assign-
permit if you have a
And assign the, I mean, they could
facility you're going to build.
well, I assume they have a standard design, which has a certain specifications and.
I don't know. I think we're making a
It's a
lot of
complex thing.
assumptions.
Yeah.
Still
Well,
has to
I'm
go
just
through the
saying that
historical.
we have a lot of situations that are more or less like this, where people are reluctant to do things that we want them to do because they don't want to go through the permitting process if they're not reasonably confident they're going to succeed. So what you ask yourself is, can we go through that process and then say, okay, we've got the permits, now we'll assign you the permits and you do it.
Well, it's got to be a non-discriminatory process, right? It can't be done with a specific vendor in mind,
Well,
you know?
then we could ask people to bid for the permits. and if we
Right.
get
So
them-
I was involved in a town where we had a tower and we did the bids, and there's a lot to it. And sometimes nobody bids. And it's pretty technical and it can take a while. Took a lot of time.
Well, it's taken a long while
Exactly.
for us to get nothing.
But
So why not? spend
What
a long
about,
time to get
I have a
something?
question for Kate, though. This other party that Verizon was approached by, is that in Concord, so it would end up with the same result, so that people will have cell service?
I mean, I think that would be Verizon's intent.
Yeah, I mean, what does
I
it
don't think they
matter?
put them up for fun.
Well, no, but I mean, it's not like it's in New Hampshire or something. This is for Concord, right? So what difference does it make if it's a town facility or a private facility, as long as we have cell coverage?
Yeah, so my understanding from the beginning is that we were less worried about sort of where it was going to be, meaning whether it was town land or privately owned, and more concerned about solving the problem. And so
Right.
to answer the question, yes, it is in Concord. Yes, it's in the search ring area that encompasses the downtown, which is right now an area that's lacking. What they don't know is whether it would solve the issue completely. And so they have to have their RF or radio frequency engineer come out and do the modeling similar to the modeling that they did for us, and make sure that the height of where they're going to have their equipment is able to close the search ring, or whether they need to have a secondary site. And they won't know that until they go through the process with the private company or the private entity to generate a lease agreement to allow them to be on the premises to conduct those tests.
Right, okay.
Does 5G solve this problem? No, I'm serious.
Well,
I
with-
actually asked that question. I did. I asked that question, and the answer is no, because what we're looking for, while 5G will boost, they need a place to boost from. And so the issue with Verizon is that they have this area in the downtown from Route 2 to pretty much the corner of Lowell Road and Barrett's Mill that sort of doesn't have any type of connectivity. And so it's searching for a signal. So they still need a home where that signal is, and then providing they're able to put up something for 5G, it would boost off that signal.
Okay, so let's stay tuned and maybe something will develop with this other entity, and otherwise we might go back to the Kai's Road plan. What kind of time frame do you think it might be, Kate? Any idea?
So last week they were, he told me, unofficially that they were having meetings this week and would be going through the process, which, is regulatory anyway through the town. And so,
Right.
That will follow the same process as any other. So I would imagine in the next month, unless something goes awry, you'll see something come through, either ZBA or another town entity for that.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to the Beatty Center parking issue. Kate, do you want to tell us about this?
Yeah, actually, I have Anna McEwen, who's our recreation director here, and certainly she's been dealing with this for many years, and I'd like to give it over to Anna. But I'm here if you have any questions.
Thanks, Kate.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Great.
Well, thank you for hearing our request tonight. Like Kate said, my name is Anna McEwen. I'm the Recreation Director. And in your packet, you received a memo that Kate submitted on our behalf, summarizing tonight's request to approve a formal parking restriction for the BD Center parking lot at 498 Walden Street. As a background, over the last few years, parking at the BD Center has become quite a big issue. If any of you are members, you might be familiar with this issue. The Recreation Department has had numerous conversations with not only the CCHS administration, but with the superintendent's office, town manager's office, police department, as to the best way to address this ongoing issue. And we've had very little success in addressing it until this point. All of our parties involved have agreed that the best way to move forward is probably with this formal parking restriction that would allow the police to ticket cars that are not supposed to be in our lot. So while a large majority of the parking violations that we're seeing at the BD Center parking lot, we believe to be CCHS students, we also see unauthorized cars parking in our lot when Walden Pond parking is overflow or closed, if the Fairyland parking lot is filled, things of that nature. So it's not just the CCHS students that we're seeing. We're at a point now where our members are being displaced. They're parking quite a far distance from our building. We have about 130 spots at the lot. And on average, we're seeing, close to 40 or 50 cars that we don't believe to be members in the lot at any given time. We're unfortunately starting to have confrontations take place in the lot between people that are parking and members. And people have reported multiple instances of not feeling safe in the lot because typically younger people are driving quickly in and out of the parking lot. So as you all know, the BD Center is charged with running a swim and fitness operation that is very unique in its operation and its restrictions. It's no secret that we've worked hard to make the business successful with a very tight bottom line, a bottom line that continues to get tighter and tighter. The parking lot issues are affecting our paying members and their experiences. And at this point in time, many of them and some vocal members have said that they're considering canceling their membership because of this issue and the frustration involved. And as you know, we rely on our patron satisfaction to sustain our operation. And this is truly proving to be a large issue. So collectively, we have tried to rectify the situation with signage in placard form, as well as the large electric signage from the police department. We have had the police put formal warnings on vehicles. The school has worked very closely with us to notify students of the rules and expectations. We've notified our members through email blasts and signage. And we've had personal conversations with folks that are parking in the lot illegally with little to no success in implementing any sort of change. So with the select board support, we feel like it is time to implement a formal parking restriction, similar to those restrictions that you see in the traffic rules and regulations schedule IA. So I welcome any questions if anybody has them, and we hope for your support tonight in that restriction.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Yes, thank you for that presentation. My question is, I assume you have to have, there's a gate you have to go through and you have to have some sort of a pass or a card to get in. Is that correct? Or is it just open access?
It's a little bit of both right now, unfortunately. So we do have gates at both entrances to the lot, but the gate has not been usable for over a year now. And being a very expensive thing to fix, we do have it in our future capital plans, but at this point, we aren't able to do more than Band-Aid fixes. When the gate won't go up, it's a large issue. And when the gate won't go down, it's a large issue. So we are looking into, the general manager is looking into gathering quotes to get that whole system replaced in the coming year.
And just to say, one of the issues is, a two-pronged attack here. And what was happening and what the staff was seeing is that somebody that may be a BD member or have a family member that's a BD member might have something to engage the gate, but then they would physically stand and hold the gate open while several of their friends came by So when the gate was slated to come down, it would break the mechanism. And so we're hesitant, before having this type of parking restriction in spending thousands of dollars to fix the gate, when we know that this would be something that happens and we just would continue to spend and spend and spend. So we'd like to get the parking restriction in first so that when and if something like that does happen, we have the ability to ticket or tow.
Thank you.
Yeah, what enforcement options are available? Is it a fine, towing, both?
So under the select board, yep, it's both. It requires, because it's a public lot, that's what it requires. So right now, we're asking people to, please help us and obey the regulations, but there's no punitive damages if someone were to decide not to.
Yeah, I mean, I think a few tows might have an impact. Okay. The other question I have is, why didn't we have this sooner? I guess it seems like it's been a problem for a while.
I think we were trying before having to go in such an extreme route to try a whole bunch of other less aggressive thing, because essentially the cost for the tow will be either given to the student or the student's family. And before taking that type of measure, we wanted to make sure that we had exhausted all other possibilities.
And the school has worked with us to try and combat this as well. They've been excellent partners. And in 2018, they did, as you might recognize, line the street to try and expand their parking options for their students. In that, while those spots have sold out and students are parking there, it still just isn't enough. So the overflow is coming to us.
Yeah, please know that the high school and the superintendent in that office has been just unbelievably helpful. But we recognize that their job is to educate and not to be the parking police. So we're trying to find a happy medium.
And then are there, clear ways to make sure that members that are visiting aren't going to get cited?
Sure. Yeah, that's certainly one of our largest concerns. And if this was approved, we would work really hard to create a good communication plan so everybody was on the same page. Because there was some confusion with members who had students at the high school who thought that was okay. But it is in our member manual that everybody receives when they join the center. It's on our website. Right now, we're giving folks green parking placards that are in their rearview mirror with BD Center logo. So when the police were helping us with the warnings on the vehicles, they were looking for those. So that's our easiest and fastest way to get a member a placard, so the police would know who's supposed to be there and who isn't.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we are ready for motion.
So move to approve a formal parking restriction for the BD Swim and Fitness Center parking lot that allows for BD customers, staff, and certain school department vehicles only. The school department vehicle will be, quote, as agreed upon by the town, since the driver's education vehicles park at BD.
Hold on, before we take the vote, I should have asked, I forgot to ask, I have a note here. Is there any public comment on this? Because I think there maybe is some. I'm remembering right.
There are a couple of BD members on the call, but I don't know whether they want to speak or not.
Nobody has their hand
Okay,
raised.
great. Okay, then I think,
No, but you do have a member.
oh, okay.
Yes. Wendy McNally, 178 Westford Road. I really appreciate Kate and Anna's effort for this as a member, a paying member, and a class participant. I use the water cardio program. I have been late for my class because I can't find a place to park. And it's discouraging. And by the time I leave my class, I watch the high school kids run across the driveway, the sidewalks, and get into their cars and leave. So I
Okay.
think it's really important for the quality of membership, for people who are there to, enjoy the classes, work out. It's discouraging to have to loop around a few times. So I'm just speaking as a member. And I think I could honestly say that there's a lot of discussion in the locker room by members with this frustration when we arrive. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Okay, I think we are ready. We have a motion on the
I
floor.
think
and
we're
second.
still going to vote for it.
Exactly.
All right.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
So Matt, maybe you better read the second part of that, just so.
Well, just that, when we approve the restriction, the town staff and BD staff are going to work with the police and Concord Public Works to install signage alerting the public to these changes. But I don't think that that's a part of our formal motion.
No, but just to. alert
Yeah,
the public,
but that will be part of the process. Yeah.
Thank you
Yes,
very
and
much.
that's in our parking regulations as well, so.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kate.
Thank you
and
for the
Anna.
support.
Okay, we turn now to town meeting articles. What we're going to do is we have 3 meetings to do this. If we don't finish, we have to schedule another meeting. So we don't want to schedule another meeting if we don't have to. What I think we're going to do tonight, since it's gotten pretty late, is each one of the articles that's on this list, there are 4 choices. Either we're going to recommend approval, or affirmative action at town meeting, or recommend no action at town meeting, or we're going to recommend that we report at town meeting, which might be the case if we don't have enough information yet. For example, there's a couple articles at the end that we don't think we have any motion coming, like unpaid bills. We might just decide report at town meeting. That's, I think, what we usually do. And our 4th choice is, if we think we're going to have a pretty sustained discussion about it, we might want to put that off and invite the sponsor of the article to come in, and we can have that whole discussion at our next meeting. So let's start with Article 3, meeting procedure.
And do we need a separate motion
Yeah,
for each?
I think we do, because there's 4 choices, and I think it would make it easier.
Okay, because we couldn't just take a bunch of them and just say, hey, we recommend affirmative action on these articles.
I think we can go through really fast.
Maybe we could go through, and I assume that everybody here is in favor of most of them.
That's what I mean.
And maybe if we could just make a list of the ones
Right.
that anybody has
An objection.
as an objection
All
of
right.
any kind, then we can just then
Go back to the,
put
all
those
right.
aside and
Okay.
then just take a vote on the remaining ones.
All right, let's do that. That's, okay. So does anyone want to discuss Article 3, meeting procedure?
No.
No.
Okay, does anyone want to discuss Article 4, ratify personnel board classification actions?
Yes, I do want to.
All right, so we're going to hold on that. 5, classification and compensation plan.
No.
No.
6, personnel board amendment.
Yes, I
All
think
right,
we need
that's
to
a
discuss
hold.
that.
All right, number 7, use of free cash.
Okay,
Okay. 11, senior means tested property tax exemption.
No.
it's okay.
12, appropriation for senior means tested tax exemption.
That's okay.
13, OPEB trust fund appropriation.
That's okay.
Good with me.
14, OPEB trust fund expense.
No.
That's okay.
16, citizen petition 5-year moratorium on the installation of synthetic turf on town land.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. 23 is the next one for tonight.
No.
Citizen ranked choice. We're going to need discussion on that for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 27, amend department revolving funds bylaw.
That's okay.
28, authorize expenditure of revolving funds.
That should be at the meeting. I think we should discuss that one.
You want to
The
discuss that?
expenditure,
Number 28, you want to have a discussion on that one?
Yes, mostly because there are no amounts in There are some amounts in it, but there are other amounts that are not in it.
Okay, we'll get back to that one then. Okay, 36, adopt local ballot option pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter.
I'm fine with that one,
Me too.
even though I had a lot of questions at the hearing.
I think Terry had some issues about it, and I have some issues about it.
I don't have any issues about it, but if you do have.
You think you might vote against it?
I do, because of the issues that actually the two of you that raised at our hearing on it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Raised him, but
figures.
I'm.
All right,
I'm
we'll
fine
hold
with him
on
in
that
the
one.
end. I'm okay.
37, authorize select board petition to impose a checkout bag charge.
Discuss.
Any problem with that one?
He said to
Discussion?
discuss.
Do you want to discuss?
Yeah.
Okay, 38, plan for municipal solar generation.
I would just like to wait till the CMLP has a chance to talk about
Okay.
this.
That should be Wednesday
All right.
morning.
Number 40.
Although I don't know for a fact. Okay.
Yeah, I think it is.
It is on the agenda?
I think
Okay.
it is.
All right.
Okay, 48 is unpaid bills.
I don't think I have a
I
problem
think
with
we
that.
should report a town meeting
Really?
though,
Okay.
probably.
But I mean,
There
we
is
heard
no
that there were
motion.
no unpaid bills, right?
Yeah.
There are no unpaid bills.
So
So
that means you
there's
wouldn't
nothing.
even move the article, right?
Right.
Correct.
So in the FinCom book, it would say report at town meeting, right?
I
would-
don't think so. I mean, we are
say
we
no
are
action.
so far into this now
Or
that we
not.
would have uncovered anything.
All right.
Yeah.
And what
That
about,
said, tomorrow there'll be one on my desk. Right?
we can
There
do a
won't be.
reconsideration if we have to. And what about debt rescission number 49? Same thing?
Same thing, yeah.
Okay, so
I think it'll read no action if they do what they've done in the past.
no action, that's fine. Okay, so let's
So is
review
that what we
where
would
we
do?
are.
We would say no action on 48 and 49?
Right, okay. So I think we're going to have a motion now to recommend affirmative action on number 3, 5, 7, 11,
7.
Yeah,
7.
7 was on the list.
Use of free cash, what, do you want to hold on that?
$1
That's-
million to go to, for free
the-
cash to go to reduce the tax rate.
That's fine.
Okay, so the motion is going to be, I think, for affirmative action on number 3, 5, 7, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16,
And 27.
27,
And then no action on 48
and
and
no
49.
action on 48 and 49. Okay. Do I hear?
I moved that the select board recommend affirmative action on Articles 3, 5, 7, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, and 27 as printed in the warrant, and no action on Articles 48 and 49 as printed in the warrant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Look how many we took care of.
Yay. Now, we'll spend a few more minutes and see where we are on the other ones, whether we're going to have to invite someone to come in, et cetera, et cetera. So the first one is number 4. Henry, I think you wanted to hold on this one. This is a personnel article.
Here's the thing that I thought we should withhold our endorsement to the meeting, because it says in it, I think it includes, and other changes voted by the personnel board between January something and the date of the meeting, and we don't know what those changes are going to be.
And there is a likelihood that the personnel board will meet again before town meeting.
Okay, then, do we want to have a motion to report at town meeting?
Town meeting.
Or is this something that you want the personnel board to come in and talk to us, or just wait till town meeting and see what those actions?
Okay, we'll wait till now we will see what the we'll
Okay.
know by then what the motion is.
You know, in the past, I think sometimes we've revisited these just before the FinCom book is, the recommendations go out in the FinCom book.
Right, well, that would be April 4th.
Okay, so this one, we
that's-
might be able to, there may be, along with this one or two others,
Right.
where we can at least take one more look before that.
Well, that's going to
So-
be the question. So we have a chance to look at these articles March 28th and April 4th. Then the FinCom book is going to press April 6th. So if you think there's more personnel board actions between April 4th and town meeting on May 1st, then we should just say report at town meeting.
I think I'm not sure about the January 27th date, but there's usually a provision in the article so that if things come up and they would be a classification or action that the personnel board takes throughout the year, and then they're ratified by this article. But if there's something that comes up between now and town meeting, that's why that's in there.
Right.
And we don't know if that's going to happen.
And that is not likely to be reported in the Finance Committee report. There's a handout that will be prepared just prior to town meeting that would incorporate any of those changes. The Finance Committee doesn't typically print that in their report.
Right. So do you want to then have us say report at town meeting? Does that make the most sense?
It sounds like we don't need to decide whether we're going to report at town meeting until April 4th.
When
Right.
does the consent calendar come out? It's
Okay,
after we've
the
all
consent calendar, we will be doing March 28th with Carmen. She will be at our meeting.
Because this is typically, 4 and 5 are typically on the consent
Okay,
calendar.
so we're going to just wait on this article. We're not going to do anything tonight. Okay.
So, the one that I thought Henry asked us to hold on was Article 6, is that correct?
Yes, that we're getting to that next. Article 6, we're going to get to next.
Okay, so I thought we just voted on number 5, we didn't?
Okay, number 5, affirmative action, we voted.
Yeah.
Okay, but number 4 is the one that we're not doing anything
Right,
about
so
right now.
doesn't number 5 relate to the objection that Henry's raising? As opposed to 6? Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, how can we approve a pay schedule without having the positions?
So in other words, the personnel board might also be changing number 5.
Well, they need to add the new position to this
If
schedule.
That's the action that happens.
Yeah.
All right, then we need to
We need to
reconsider our
either
vote on
reconsider
number
5 or just agree to number 4. Yeah. I do not anticipate us objecting to number 4.
I don't either. I mean,
When have we ever?
no, but if something very unusual happens, we have the opportunity to
Yeah.
discuss it at town meeting.
Right,
But
so I think that we
it's
could
been
just-
such a routine item for so long, I don't
Right,
think.
and the ones we know are standard. So I rather than rescinding our vote for 5, I would just prefer to just make an affirmative action vote for 4. That's my,
I would too.
I assume that if we even recommend affirmative action and then something happens we don't like, we can change our recommendation.
yes, we can.
And reconsider any of these votes with, I think, a 2/3 vote of our board. We can reconsider.
And I
any
can't
of them.
imagine that we wouldn't vote
I know.
2/3 for,
If there was reason to.
Well,
Yeah.
it'd have to be 3/5.
all right, either way. I think it'd have to be
No, I think
4/5. 4/5.
4/5.
3/5 doesn't quite get you to 2/3.
That's right.
All right. So is that all right? I move to recommend affirmative action on Article 4 as printed in the warrant.
Second.
Vote.
All right, all in favor?
Aye. Okay.
Okay. All right, now we're on Article 6. Personnel bylaw amendment.
This is about vacation days.
I think this one is
Bereavement
going to
leave.
take some discussion. I think that we probably should put it on a meeting for some discussion. And does anyone have specific questions for the personnel board or for anyone else?
Well, I think the thing that came up at our hearing that was most interesting or significant, I think, was Anita's suggestion that it might be much more effective to just have flex time and have give people just a certain number of days that they could use, whether it be sick days, vacation days, bereavement days, family leave days, child care leave, whatever, and just give them, 23 and a half days a year that they could use for any of those items, instead of specifying you get so much vacation, so et cetera, et cetera.
So if I may be misremembering, but I thought the personnel director said
But she doesn't like it, I know that.
that's an interesting concept, but it would take much more time, and that could be considered for next year's.
So
I didn't understand why it would take more time, because she said something about giving people credit for unused time, but I don't see why, if you have an amalgamated lump of time off, you can't give people credit in that.
But wouldn't that mean that our choices for this coming fiscal year would either be stick with what we got or take this? I don't know that we have any other option, right? Because we can't come up with, it's too late to come up with another scheme and get it on the town meeting warrant.
Right.
So we
okay.
don't have any other
Yeah, you're right.
path.
Okay, that's right, because that
We either
would-
stick with what we
would
got,
not
which
be-
we know is not competitive,
Yeah, okay, so.
or we do something that may not be ideal, but is more competitive.
No, you're right. That was an interesting concept, but it would not be within the scope of the warrant.
Because, in my world, in the corporate world, we have implemented so-called unlimited vacation.
Yes,
And
there's a hook to
unlimited
that.
vacation actually has a catch, which
Yes.
actually finance people really like, which is unlimited vacation actually means no vacation.
Right.
And there's no accrual, It's just what you negotiate with your manager. You take whatever days, it's all off the books.
And if you
And-
take enough, they say, why do we need you?
Well, yeah, but there's no set limits.
Right.
But yeah, you get no vacation accrual.
And
And
the same for sick time. My
you
son
get
works
to
for
a
company
certain number
like
of
that.
days and then it just stays and that's
Yep.
it. And
He's still afraid to take time off.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
so that's the way the corporate world's gone.
Yep.
And I don't know if municipalities are far behind, but that's.
Okay, well, the question for us is, do we want to debate this now? Or do we want to have our HR director come in or the chairman of the personnel board come in at our next meeting?
Well, is this as controversial as we're making it out to be? I don't know that it is. I'm fine with it.
I was ready to move on it.
Yeah, me
Okay,
too.
I'm fine with, I mean,
All right, if
Okay.
we're ready to move on it,
okay,
we'll have a motion
we've
on it.
had the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
that was my question.
So move to recommend affirmative action on Article 6 is printed in the warrant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we are up to Article 23, and I think that is absolutely going to take a lot of discussion. This is the ranked choice
Yes.
voting. I would like to invite the petitioner to come in to our next meeting, and we can have a discussion.
With the
Sounds-
caveat that there is a better presentation.
What
Because
we-
the
what we
one
were-
reason I would,
Right.
the only reason I would entertain taking the time here to go through a whole nother presentation is for the sake of the public, to have a better understanding.
Right.
of what's-
So
Yeah.
what she wants to do is be able to show that video, but also she has a backup person who did this article in Arlington and can answer all kinds of questions. So
But
she
are
wants
they
to-
a town
No,
resident?
no, but they can come to our meeting and explain it at least. And then with permission of the moderator, yeah.
I really look askance at
I understand that.
articles that can't be promoted by their authors.
I understand
Well,
that.
we need to see, I think.
As much as I'm very strongly in favor of the concept.
Well, we're not going to decide tonight. I think we should let the petitioner figure out how to come in to us, and we can really talk it through.
What we want to see when they come in is essentially the vote counting rules.
Yes.
Okay, so how, actually how, I understand the general concept, I think we all do.
Right.
But there were a number of questions that Carrie raised about, and what happens if people only check the box for their third
Right.
choice, or what the rules are, and can explain what the impact of those behaviors are.
I agree. I think I talked to the petitioner. I also saw the presentation at the League of Women Voters meeting, and they did show the video. It answers a lot of these questions, but there's still a lot left. So the
And
petition.
at least what we have now, everybody understands.
Right.
They may
Okay.
not like it, but they understand
Right.
it.
Okay, the next article is number 28. Henry, you wanted to discuss this one?
28. The only reason I checked that off was that it has in it 28.
It has the annual spending
It
limits
has-
for revolving
it
funds.
It lists specific amounts with specific revolving funds. And I believe that we're going to authorize another revolving fund for, isn't there an warrant article for?
Yes, for the BDC, for the tourism.
visitors, for the
Well-
business development, is that not?
No, just for the
It is
visit, the
included.
tourism is a new one.
Right, visitor center and
Vote
tourism.
on a new revolving fund.
Yes, called Visitor Center and Tourism.
And this is
And
the
that's in
amount.
the
And
article.
that's here.
Mhm.
Okay. I think and are you also voting on then we will be approving the specific amounts as well?
Yes.
Those are the limits.
Limits,
Can't
yeah.
spend more than that.
I'm okay.
All right. Move to recommend affirmative action on Article 28 as written in the warrant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next one is Article 36. We could discuss that now or at another meeting, whichever. Henry, you had some questions on
Yeah,
it?
well, I had the same, well, Matt said he had some questions at our hearing, but he's okay with it now. I still have an issue with two parts of it.
Okay,
One is, as you pointed out, it means that we have to handle all referendum items in this manner. And in many of not just things like the school, I think what we originally had in mind is that when the town meeting approved $103,672 for the middle school, that when people go to the polls, there would be nothing on the ballot saying how much they were voting to spend. That they would just be voting to approve the expenditure that was voted by the town meeting. And the expectation, although I don't know if it is the fact, is that far more people will go to the polls to vote on an override than will go to town meeting. And many of them will not know what it is they're voting for. That in that case, it would have been a good thing to be able to put on the ballot at the polls either what the amount was or what the approximate amount was. But in many cases, we really don't get very many cases like that. And as you pointed out, sometimes it's hard to find out who the proponent is or who the opponent is for a ballot question. And we leave it to, who is it, town council, to decide who represents the parties, and also to review and approve the statements of the parties. And that seems like a it's a troubling delegation of authority.
Okay.
Well, and it's likely that that will be determined internally and then recommended to the legal counsel, I would guess.
I don't.
That's still a process issue.
I think it's a process issue, and of course, it may actually be a real problem if the town is strongly in favor of something that is coming up for a vote, and the town council, of course, is employed by the town and is likely to be biased in favor of the town's position.
Well, I guess one of the reasons that I'm a little bit milder mannered on this than I was at the public hearing is that there is a precedent for this, which is the Attorney General, who serves at the pleasure of the public, but is an official of the Commonwealth, is doing the same thing for state ballot initiatives, right? And so I think that. But it's a pretty similar. I mean, yes, they're elected, so that is a little different.
And they are presumably neutral. At least they're presumptively neutral on most of the issues that would come up. Now, if somebody puts on the ballot a question to eliminate the office of Attorney General, they might not be unbiased about it.
Yeah, or regulate basketball.
Yeah. So, but I think that but they are not hired. They are not hired by a likely proponent of one side or the other in an issue that's likely to come up. So.
Well, I think the middle school is a good example because I think town council would be pretty neutral on that type of thing.
Well, I think so. What we were thinking about was not presenting the arguments. In that case, what we were thinking is just put the number out there.
Well,
and then
no.
You pointed out that you just can't do that. You need if you're going to put anything on that ballot other than yes or no, you need to adopt the statute. And then we see what comes along with the statute, which is a lot of stuff that in many cases is irrelevant or troubling.
Well, okay. I think that the idea of the statute is to give the voters some basic information, 150 words or less, about what are the costs, what are the benefits, what are the pros, what are the cons. Similar to the statewide.
Sounds good on paper.
Yeah, I mean,
my experience with some of the statewide descriptions, arguments, is that sometimes it's difficult to even know what you're reading in those descriptions, whether or not things have been presented truthfully or whether they are being very clever in terms of how they're writing up the description so that it makes it confusing to the public. No?
In the case of this, it would be a local determination on what goes in there, right?
Right. I mean, town council.
Determination on.
Of what goes in the pro and the con on the ballot.
Right.
I mean, we would just, the town, town council would.
Town council is supposed to find an opponent and a proponent. But I think probably the select board is going to look at it, and interim town manager is going to look at it, and if it doesn't make any sense, then we'll probably speak up and say, I don't understand this explanation. Can you wordsmith it differently? I think, but, either way, I just thought it would be helpful to voters to have the information.
Maybe what we should say is then that we take no position and leave it to the voters to decide.
Well, except for that, I think we put this thing on the warrant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
then we
it won't be the first time we've been embarrassed.
Well.
Well, we can take a vote now, or we can think about it and take a vote another day.
And we don't have to be unanimous.
Right.
No,
sometimes it happens.
It often happens. I think.
Is anybody ready to vote now, or does everybody want to wait, or Has everybody got their mind made up?
I don't have my mind made up.
Okay, so let's put this off and we can continue discussing it. And the next one is number 37. Checkout bag charge.
I should just mention that, I'm looking at the text of Mass General Laws 53, Section 18B, and it's talking about that you can have a ballot question committee of the town that evaluates the statements made for and against to determine what goes on the ballot.
Oh, another committee.
Yeah, all right.
So
Okay,
just saying.
I'm gonna be taking another look at it with Kari anyway, so that's good.
Okay.
I'll make a note of that.
Matt, maybe you could be the liaison to that.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone want to discuss the checkout bag charge now, or do we want to invite the petitioner to come in, or what do we want to do on this one?
Didn't they already make the presentation?
They did. Do we have more questions, or
I'm okay with it. I mean,
who asked for a hold on this one?
I did. I'm the guy who asked for.
All
a hold
right.
on
Do you have
everything.
questions?
I think it's just a nutty idea. That's all.
Okay.
it's what?
I think it's a nutty idea. That's all.
Oh, okay, I see it in, like when I go to Framingham or there's all other towns where,
And as I point out, there are places where you bring your own bag, they give you 10 cents off.
right,
And I think that's a reasonable way to handle it. And that's what they want to do, they can do it. And I think we could go around, some of our sustainability director can go around to different stores and kind of make the sale.
Well,
That was my question to the petitioner, whether or not he had spoken
with any business owners.
And that question was asked, and he said no, he hadn't
That's
been
right.
around to the stores.
Correct.
No, and that's where I do believe that we should have a follow-up discussion.
Yep.
I think there were some ambiguities in the presentation, and
Yes,
it would be good to get that input before we voted, I think.
I agree. Okay, that was, oops, I wrote down the wrong number, 37. Okay, number 38.
Is there an economic development committee meeting before?
Yeah, it would be nice to get their take.
Yeah.
In economic vitality,
Vitality.
good luck.
You can send me that. Okay. Article 38, solar generation.
I think I was the one who, again, raised my hand on that one, and I don't see any harm in it. Let it go if everybody else is in favor of it. It's just asking the light plan to adopt a policy to
About how they're going to meet our town goals.
Meet a town goal.
Yeah.
Of, so it's on the one hand, it's kind of it makes sense and it's not necessary, but no, that's it. So
It's a nudge.
we're okay.
It's a,
Yeah, I think he
that's,
I think
a
the
nudge is a polite way to
petitioner
put it, but yeah.
feels it's necessary
And
to,
it will make-
And I also was suggesting that since this light board has a meeting on Wednesday where I think this is going to be discussed,
Mhm.
I was hoping to hear from them, hear more
Yeah.
about that discussion.
Well, and again, we could put this off for that,
let's
To
put
sake
this
of
depend on
on.
that.
their decision.
Okay,
to
great.
hear if there are any counter arguments.
All right.
Okay?
And that's it.
That's it.
Okay, we will have 2 more nights to do this. After we hear,
And we have relatively few left then. It's just there.
Well, there's
we
no,
have
Oh, because we have all the finance committee.
the other
have all the
hearings.
Never mind.
Yeah.
planning board ones
And
too.
planning board this yet to
Yeah.
come. Yeah, okay.
Okay, all right, we are up to committee nominations.
The second. Keith Bergman of 56 White Avenue to the Metropolitan Area Planning Council Town Representative, MEPC.
Okay, and then for appointments, of course, I don't have that.
I've got it though. Just a second. Sorry, I just got the wrong Word document up in front of me. Move to reappoint Theo Kindermans of 252 Fairhaven Road to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term to expire April 30th, 2025, and Ravi Faya of 169 Plainfield Road to the ZBA as Associate member for a term to expire on April 30th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we are up to liaison reports. Who would like to go first?
I'm not going to go first because I have to collect myself. Yeah.
I can go first.
Okay, Linda.
The housing group is just, Concord Housing Authority has just issued an RFP for ComAv property. And they did in fact have someone at the information meeting, so they're hoping that Habitat came to the information meeting, so they're hoping that they will follow through with that. The Cemetery Committee, we've already heard the wonderful gift that they just voted on. They also have already decided on project priorities that the committee itself wants to work on for the cemetery next year, and basically has to do with some field testing of different ground covers, and also looking at some tree replanting. So, you know, a lot of effort is going into trying to get that property in better environmental condition. So, and I think we've certainly heard from the trust tonight, so I don't need to talk about that. Just that we've had way too many meetings in too short of time.
Gotten a lot done, though.
Yes, we
A
have.
lot done, thank you. Susan.
I'll go next. The Personnel Study Task Force met Monday, and I'm not sure if I reported this out at our Monday meeting, but they were issuing an employee survey on Friday, but they didn't want to share it with either the select board or the town manager or town council. So I can't tell you what the nature of it was, but it's out there.
Do you have a copy?
I do not have a copy. They chose not to give us that information.
Do they have independent authority to do that?
If I might, I did end up seeing the survey before it went out. The questions were perfectly fine. I think I had expressed some concern to them at a meeting earlier about certain questions, and for the most part, I think that information and advice was taken and incorporated into their survey. So, and it was issued on Friday, and I have received some feedback. I think some employees think it's great and are interested in participating, and some were less interested in participating, like with any survey.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm glad there was some input. Thank you. West Concord Junction Cultural District, and that was already mentioned tonight about the Porch Fest and the unveiling of the mural. Economic Vitality Committee met last Wednesday, and they're still very focused on getting an economic vitality officer or presence in the town. And the Concord Business Partnership, I think it's next month's meeting.
April 6th.
April, okay, that's
April
right, you
6th.
would know, is going to have 4 people come from different communities who already have these positions to inform the partnership about what they do. And of course, there's nuances between towns, but I think it's important to hear that before moving forward, so we get an idea of what it's.
And I've encouraged them to make it as much an in-person meeting as possible, because I think it's a great opportunity to actually meet and have informal conversation with these people. And it will be, I think, at the John Boynton's place over in West Concord.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I forget the time, but
It's usually 7:30. Is that what it is? 7:30 to 9?
yes,
Oh,
it's an early morning call. Yes, my favorite.
I know. Oh, it was 7:30. I didn't make that one this last week. And the NRC met, and there was, I think, the most active discussion was about the amendments to the White Pond, the necessity to take down more trees because of the way the path was going, and also the road widening, because the code is different for the road that goes down to the water. The emergency road, you have to have enough for vehicles going in both directions. So there was a fair attendance from White Pond neighbors, but only a couple of questions. And Kate discussed what the mitigation would be for the additional tree removal. It was 72 inches of caliper, and they were going to replace it with 36. It was 20-some trees they were talking about. But then Kate clarified in a more recent communication that included some that have already been counted. So it's not clear to me what the exact count is of total trees being removed. But I mean, that's a known thing. I just don't know
I
what
did
it is.
see a memo on that from Kate today,
Yeah,
so if anybody wants it, we can have that sent around. And it was double counting, and there might be only 7 more trees or something that have to come down.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is so fire agents can get down to the pond. Is that what it is?
It's that serpentine path that goes down the pond, and also the fire road. They had to cut in more to the bank, and then they discovered trees that were appeared to be okay, but then when they looked at them, they were cutting right into the root structure to widen the road.
You don't really have a lot of fires in ponds, do you?
No, this is for emergency EMT.
Ambulance and,
Yeah.
emergency vehicles. And that was it for me. Thank you.
Okay, who would like to go next?
I guess I will. I've actually had a number of meeting delays or cancellations. We had a very unfortunate case with the Pollinator Health Advisory Committee where their Zoom link wouldn't work and there was no way to recover. So the meeting had to be canceled about half an hour in. People were on hold waiting. So that was not very good. And then the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee delayed their meeting. Now will take place on March 17th. That was going to happen last week. And then the Finance Subcommittee meeting of the Concord Middle School Building Committee is being delayed because contracts or amendments are still being executed with the architect and the owner project manager. I did attend a Trails Committee meeting, pretty normal output there. And there's some other background activity happening with the 229 Main Street Committee, really coming up with a letter to talk about options for the town. So not a lot is happening this past couple weeks in meetings themselves, but in other activities that are going on.
Matt, I just have a question about Bruce Freeman. Was it on their agenda of the meeting that's been postponed to discuss the survey results?
Well, among other things,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
but
the whole plan for Junction Park.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Are you sure the date is the 17th? Because there's
That's the
a lot of
hearing.
meetings were canceled that day because of the public hearing.
That it is scheduled to happen now on this 3/17.
Okay.
What time?
7 p.m.,
Yeah.
which is conflicts with the
That's
public
what
hearing.
Yeah, well, okay.
That
mean,
shouldn't be
some-
possible to schedule
well,
such a meeting.
Tomorrow night is the planning board, but the school committee is meeting. I mean, there are some committees that are meeting anyway, so,
Right.
okay.
Well, and I'm missing a Pollinator Health Advisory Committee meeting right this minute.
Right, and I'm missing a transportation committee. I mean, that's
Yeah.
unavoidable.
But
Okay.
I think we should try to schedule meetings so that they do not conflict with town meeting public hearings.
Yep.
That's for sure.
We've been trying.
I wonder if that meeting will be recorded, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail meeting will be recorded.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Will
They
we
have been.
They have been doing
Given
that.
that everyone's here for, you
No,
think?
they have been recording the Bruce Freeman.
Okay, especially with the results on the survey?
Yeah.
On 222, those 329 Main Street,
Yeah.
I've had some additional correspondence with town council on the liability issues. and particularly discussion of the possibility of class action lawsuits brought under the Municipal Claims Act. And he does concede at this point that the considerations of potential future liability are a legitimate concern that need to be addressed as a policy issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot more to discuss on 2229 Main.
Absolutely.
So
I'm holding open the possibility of still having a focus meeting in April about that, but we might not be ready, or we might have to finish on town meeting articles, so we will see. Okay, Henry.
Where should I start? The Civil War Monument Committee continues to make progress. We gave them an extended time, and they are working on getting quotations. They've reported that they've designed a plaque, and they want to restore the monument. Rosa Hallowell, who was a member of that committee, a very active committee, member of the committee, resigned for reasons of personal health issues, but she is a direct descendant of Robert Gould Shaw, who was the commanding officer of the 54th Massachusetts Volunteers, which had as one of its members George Dugan, of all people. And so, and I don't know whether, I've asked them if they want to replace her, and they did mention one person who they're looking into to join.
But there's very short time left, right?
I know,
There's only
that's
another
true. Well,
meeting or two.
I still asked the question,
Yeah.
and they had an answer. And because my secret plan here is that they would, after they file their report with us and we endorse the report, we're going to say, who is it that we want to have actually carry out the work? And I would like to see them carry out the work that they have, or the program that they've designed, because it's going to, need some attention to finish, and just some involvement of many hands to do it.
Mhm.
Not that they're going to do the work, but they have to, deal with the vendors and so on. And I should mention that there is a ceremony on June 1st to recognize the completion of the restoration of the Shaw plaque on the Boston Common. It was done by a well-known French sculptor, Saint Gaudens. And so that is something I suggested to them, that because of that connection of Robert Gould Shaw and the 54th Volunteers, that the town actually might want to send a delegation to that ceremony. With regard, speaking of ceremonies, a week ago, I attended the meeting of the Celebrations Ceremonies Committee, and we now have a full-blown Patriots Day parade.
Yay.
We have a dawn salute. We have a Merriam's Corner. We have a ceremony for 3 honored citizens, not only the one who will be chosen this year, but the ones from the 2 previous years who did not get ceremonies. And we've even got to the point of saying, well, how are we going to fit 3 honored citizens and their spouses in the horse-drawn carriage? And the answer is from one of my contacts in the Independent Battery is, maybe we can get a second horse-drawn carriage. So, and then there was supposed to be a coordination meeting for various interested parties. Today it was, wasn't it, that was canceled because the Celebrations Committee said they were not ready, and I sent them a stimulating note today. But the police department and the public safety people are going to have a coordination meeting, I think, in the near future. So that is going to happen. One thing I think that I had sent a memo about this, but I don't know if it got on the town website, and that is they had agreed to extend the date for nominations for the honored citizen to the 13th.
Oh, okay.
And that I had asked, that should be on the, prominently displayed on the town's website, and also along with the link to the form or the online means to nominate people, because as of a week ago, they had but one nominee. So we need to do better.
No, I
than
wasn't
that.
able to make mine. I mean,
And by
I
the
just
way,
learned
that
on Monday night.
Nominee was
that
not any of us.
Well, no, but I mean, I had just learned on Monday night that nominations were due on Friday. I did not get mine in. So
Now get it in.
Okay, so the
Well, okay.
deadline is
You
now
want it?
March 13th.
That is this Sunday.
Okay.
Okay, and if you want to nominate, you go on the website where?
Well, it was last week, it was one of the top news items on the website. Maybe we can, because of the extension of the date, maybe it can be made into a new news item, which will raise it to the top of the
Great, that's great.
the list there.
Mhm.
What else did I have? I have these two.
The 250th?
I think there's little change from the report I gave last week on that. We still have 26 people who responded affirmatively.
And I have
you
you,
were going to get me
the charge.
changes to the charge.
That's right, and I've been working on that, and
Is it really?
I don't know, yeah.
I have to look in. I have a notebook with everything.
That's
in
it, that's the committee that's not on the
list.
The list. The 250th committee, Carrie, is missing on the list.
On the select board list, you mean? Or
On the website.
Oh.
I've been
it's
trying,
on the select board liaison list. It's just not on the website.
that's
But I
right.
mean that-
And so it's really hard to find the charge right now because we don't have the minutes approved from some of those meetings.
There were meetings. There were meetings in the first several meetings I was on the
I
board,
know.
which would be last June.
I know, I've sent out a few notices to staff and it's going to be research project.
I may be able to find them. I've just
All right.
been. I think I've just been busy building Patriots Day.
Okay, and what did you say about the Civil War Task Force? Will they be coming into the select board soon to?
Well,
Give
we
the
gave
report.
them, what was it? We gave them until a date after town meeting. I think they asked for
Oh, good.
60 days, and we may have given them 90 to get them past town meeting. And I do have one more thing to report, but we did give them till a date after town meeting to their report, and we deleted their expiration date. I continue to pursue our access to the Concord Armory.
Oh,
And now I have arranged a visit, a tour with the town clerk on Thursday at noon. We're going to go over there and take a look around with the colonel who operates it.
excellent.
And we're going to see what's there and what we need, because even though they've said that they still need it for their mission, there is an opening or a possibility that it might still be available to us for certain uses, such as a polling site, record storage, Patriots Ball, maybe even, I was thinking, honored citizen ceremonies, when you say you have a ceremony where you want to have the whole Concord Independent Battery and the Minutemen and their horses and elephants and whatever they have in an indoor ceremony.
When you said we're meeting, it's at the battery? Is that At the
When?
Armory.
The town clerk and me.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So we continue to plug away at that one.
Excellent. All right.
I have a question when we're done with the.
I think we're done with liaison.
Okay.
You don't have anything from the school committee or the finance committee?
I looked through and
Nothing's
there's
happening. They're not doing anything.
lots of public hearings going on right now.
I'm sure they're not doing anything.
Yeah, lots of public hearings.
They never do anything.
I didn't attend or look at what the finance committee discussion following the hearing on Thursday night, but they did discuss the CPC, and was that going to be on our list, or do we not?
Well, we haven't gotten to the finance committee articles yet.
Oh,
You mean
okay.
taking position on articles?
Yeah.
There are 30 or something more articles that we still have to take position on.
I know, but I'm sorry, I thought some of these that we were doing had been discussed at finance committee.
Yeah, well, what I tried to put on was the ones that I thought would be quick tonight.
Okay. So
So
that'll be on a
that'll be
future-
on, right. So our next meeting is March 14th, and that is a week from today. That is a focused meeting on transportation, and Nick Pappas is chair. He's been working really hard with his group. I think they're very organized. I think it's going to be really good. And we had a really good meeting with Carrie, Kate, Marcia, and Alan. And I got some really good feedback from Nick that Marcia and Alan were really helpful on that. So, we're not going to solve everything, but we're going to start to lay out a transportation plan at that meeting.
So these will probably be, are we meeting the 21st?
The 21st, we are not meeting.
Okay.
And then the next 2 weeks, the 28th of March and the 4th of April, we are going to take position on all the rest of the articles.
I hope we do nominations next week. I have one.
Well, we do, okay.
We can
You
stick
can
it in.
send that in.
Yeah,
We can do
okay.
that. Okay, I don't see any miscellaneous correspondence, and we're up to public comment. Don't see any here. Is there any public comment on Zoom?
I don't know how to raise my hand. Oh,
Okay, Courtney Whalen.
sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I couldn't find the button. Courtney Whalen, 65 Dover Street. I just want to make a quick comment on the 5G. I know we didn't get to see Jason's presentation, but I just want to thank the board for just kind of starting the process and discussing this and starting to move forward with this. And I agree with Mr. Bulger that I think that the matter is pretty urgent and time sensitive. I know that Lincoln does have a policy in place over there, and they've already received submissions from the industry to start implementing 5G in their town. So I just think, just encourage the board, to kind of keep this as a time sensitive matter. Because I know without a policy here in Concord, the residents in the town are gonna be vulnerable to the exclusive interest of the telecom companies. And we can have 5G small antennas kind of anywhere in the town with little to no input from the boards or the people that live here, because it's, they're pretty protective of industry interests. So again, thank you for starting the process, and I look forward to hearing the further discussion and see what Jason is coming up with. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in the public comment?
Yes, please, Diane Proctor.
Hi, Diane.
Hi, 57 Sudbury Road. Terry, there's two comments, quick comments. One is that when we raise our hands from the public in a hybrid meeting, they're not being picked up particularly. I know you guys can't see it, but the people who are watching at home on Zoom can. And so that's just a comment in terms of the technology and the way in which all that works. And Linda, you look puzzled, and I can't quite see faces, but I don't believe I'm misspeaking. But at any rate, the second thing is to say that I just want to again urge us to, in the absence of a robust town newspaper, to notice that when people came to vote at the last election, a lot of them had no idea what was going to be on the ballot. They knew one thing that had brought them, but not necessarily everything. And therefore, the more informed we can make our general population and citizenry, the better it will be. These are the motion that you discussed this evening, I believe is an important one. So any way that we can help with that in the league, in any way that citizens can support you, we would love to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in public comment?
Pamela Britt,
Hi, Pam.
13 Concord Green, Unit 4. I just wanted to briefly say that I'm strongly in favor of the 10-cent bag charge because it doesn't change the economics of the situation. It simply makes it visible and allows people to opt into saving themselves and the businesses and the town money in a way that has statistically and experimentally been shown to be the most effective. So I'm strongly in favor of it. I understand the idea of, well, some businesses do give you 10 cents off if you bring in your own bag. But this is everyone is involved.
Okay, thank you. We will be taking up that article on March 28th, and we will have the petitioner, inviting the petitioner to attend. So we will be discussing that article on March 28th. Thank you. Any other comment? Okay. I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Henry.